Let's call meeting to order. We'll start with the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, welcome to everybody. The May 19th, 1 p.m. general session. Welcome to the folks that are on Zoom. I will ask the Secretary Treasurer to call the roll.
Scott Horowitz.
Present.
Ed Warner, President. Chip Marin.
Here.
Joe McLaughlin.
Here.
Parsons.
Mr.
President.
Thank you very much. Just an announcement before we get into what looks to be a very busy meeting here. The next meeting that we have, the next work session, which is June 2nd, we're going to amend the starting time to 10:30 a.m. because of the traffic. Try and make it a lot easier for people to get here, including the trustees. So just be on the lookout for that change. June 2nd, it'll start at 10:30. Regular meeting will be the same at 1 p.m. We've had some communications. I will make a motion to dispense with reading of that.
Second.
Seconded by Trustee Warner. All in favor?
Aye.
I would like to make a motion to go out of order just based on the logistics of what we have going on here today. So,
Second.
seconded by Trustee Warner. All in favor?
Aye.
I see I have some of our law enforcement professionals here, and I want to get them back out where they need to be. So I would like to start with the third public hearing to consider the revocation of the mooring permits at Josh Belore. I'd like to open that public hearing.
Second.
Seconded, Trustee Warner. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right, who wants to speak? Counsel, you want to say anything on this one here?
Well, there have been a number of matters that have been pending in Justice Court. We have the Bay Constables who've issued numerous notices of violation. I think that the Bay Constable should lay out the situation as it exists.
You prepared for that? Can you do that? Don, Mr. Downs, Officer Downs, Constable Downs, Marine Patrol Downs.
Sure.
You want to come up with us, if you can, just.
Simply put, we've had a couple issues with the vessels not being taken out of the water. Instead, the moorings being removed from the town waters for December 1st for the trustees' rules and regulations at North Sea Harbor. It dates back to as early as 2019. First violation was a vessel being swapped on the mooring without properly notifying the trustees. There was a violation issued back then in, that was October of 2019. Then followed to December of 2022. Same situation, the moorings were not hauled from the water prior to December 1st, 2022. 2 violations were issued then. And then lastly leads us to the situation now where the vessels and their moorings have remained in the water until recently from 2024 season.
Okay, thank you, Officer Downs. Appreciate that synopsis.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
What's the current status? Everything is off,
Vessels are out of the water, moorings are still in currently.
the tackle and everything is still there.
Correct, yes.
Okay.
But he did comply and get the vessels out.
Pardon me, I didn't catch the last part.
He did comply and the vessels are out of the water.
He did comply, is that what you said?
The vessels are out of the water.
When
yes.
were they removed?
The moorings are still there, which is the violation. Not removing the moorings prior to December 1st of 2024. So,
When were they removed? Time frame? You don't have to give me an exact date, but a time frame.
most recent one was about 4 weeks ago, I believe, the concrete boat. Yes, prior to that.
So the boats are out.
Boats are out,
Boats
yes.
are out,
Yeah.
anchors are in, so technically,
Yes.
the permit is still not in compliance.
Constable Downs, can I ask you one quick question? What is the reason for seasonally removing the mooring anchors and the tackle out of the water?
Letting the sea life structure at the bottom to regrow and heal itself through the off-season. Also allows the baymen to come in.
The tackle.
Okay.
If you leave the tackle in the water, eventually it's gonna rot away, and then you get heavy wind, you get a storm, that chain is gonna break. In
Maintenance.
turn, the sailboat is gonna become adrift and cause damage in the harbor.
Has that occurred? Have we had any damage?
Not with these vessels.
Not with those, but many in
You
the
have
past.
had-
Other ones.
Many in the past,
Oh,
yes.
I've had examples of this in the past.
Yes.
Right.
When was the last time you were able to inspect the tackle on the moorings?
We don't
if you
don't
do
inspect it.
visual inspections for
We
moorings.
do not.
It's up to the permit holder to inspect his own tackle.
And to my knowledge, last time the moorings out were after the violations of the 2024 season. They were hauled and then replaced beginning of the 2025 season. So they have been in from the beginning of 2025. 2024, correction. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very, very much for your service to the trustees and the community. Appreciate that. Thank you. We may have some more questions. Does anybody else want to speak on this? I know, Josh, you probably want to speak, but as
Hello, Barbara Wilson. I'm here for Josh Valori. So as you're aware, or maybe not, these moorings, who were they issued to? The permit.
As far as I can tell, it was a Josh Valori permit and something involving Sea Scouts.
Right, so they weren't really issued to Josh Valori, and that's the person that's here today and is being told that his moorings are going to be removed. But they're not his moorings because they were not issued, that permit was not issued to him. It was issued to the Sea Scouts for Autism, a group I think we can all agree, which is a very worthy group. And the very reason for the Duncan patent, of course, is to make sure that all persons have the right to utilize the seas. Certainly, we wouldn't want special need children being deprived the right to go on a sea adventure and learn some responsibilities of being in the sea. So these moorings that you're talking about are really issued to the Sea Scouts. And they have not been properly served upon myself or upon my client, Josh Valori. Or the Sea Scouts.
I just have right here that the mooring permit is in fact, the applicant is Josh Valori, Sea Scout Ship 908, 81 Hillcrest Ave, Southampton, New York, 11968. And then I would also, and I'd also like to make note that both vessels are in fact registered to Josh Valori, and some of them are out
No,
of
they're not
registration.
registered to Josh Valori. You have the registrations, actually, you have a copy of the registrations?
The Duchess is a federally documented vessel.
Pardon
That
me?
was that. The Duchess is a federally documented vessel that's out of date.
But
And-
it's not registered to Josh Valori.
No, it is.
Yes,
You
it
have the
is.
registrations.
Documentation.
Oh, for the federal documentation. But the documentation that was provided to me in the Justice Court, which is the discoverable material in this matter, did not show that it was registered to Josh Valori. It showed that it was registered to the Sea Scouts.
The concrete constructed vessel Duchess is not registered in the state of New York at all.
It's a federally documented vessel.
hang on, just want to make sure you get this off the record. Kevin, are you picking up everybody's voice so that we have this record straight?
You have everybody's voice on the recording? You guys
can
gotta
go to
get
the
to a
podium
microphone by the
because creating
podium
an
for us to
issue.
get a record.
I'm not arguing back and forth.
Yeah, you don't have
Oh,
to.
no,
Just-
I don't
No,
think
just
he's
whatever you
arguing
want to
with
say.
you.
To be able to record the
Just for clarity,
we need to be able to record you. We can't get you from the seat, so.
You
just
want to come up here, Mr.
Please.
Gowns, it's fine. You can
Come
sit
on
here.
up here, I won't bite you, I promise.
You can sit here. No, you can sit right here. They'll pick you up right here.
the current certification, the current United States Coast Guard certification documentation is the vessel Duchess.
Which is expired as of
off-
April 30, 2024. So it's an
official-
undocumented, unregistered, federally or locally registered vessel.
I will check on that in a moment. But the
with
paperwork
the
that
US
I
Coast
was
Guard on
given
that.
right here, hold on one moment, please. So it says indemnification and hold harmless issued by the Board of Trustees. I Sea Scout Ship 908. That's who it was issued to.
It says Josh Valori on the top of that. It says applicant is Josh Valori, Sea Scout Ship 908.
I mean, aside from,
These, and may I read this?
aside from all the semantics, or whatever you want to call it,
This is the meeting of May 1, 2023. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Freeholders and Commonalty of the Town of Southampton hereby waives the 2 mooring application fees of $300 each in North Sea Harbor for the Sea Scouts of America for the purpose of the 2023 as the corporation was organized, et cetera, et cetera. So clearly, that's who it was issued to.
so here we are, Board of Trustees, waiving fees and trying to
Yes.
accommodate because,
Right, because
Hold
it's a worthwhile.
hold on,
Yes.
okay, because it's a worthy outcome that we're looking to get people with autism, whatever, right? I have a long history of mentoring children and charity and so forth. That's all great, and that's why we engaged in this. However, you still have rules and regulations that you have to follow, and there are good reasons for that, inspecting of ground tackle, letting the bottom heal. We're not disputing any of what you're saying. We just wanted compliance with the rules and regulations for the safety of everybody else in the community and the environment. And based on the fact that we waived the fees and we're very accommodating for quite a period of time, I think in return, whoever the responsible party was, whether it's the Boy Scouts of America, the Sea Scouts, whoever was responsible to facilitate the handling of that, I think should have, at the very least, played by the rules and not created this situation that we're all in right now. We have better things to do with our time, okay? Just comply with our rules and regulations. I don't think that was too much to ask.
So with response to that, the mooring permit application was also in the Sea Scout Ship 908. So while we can all agree, and I'm very aware, and we've worked together with Big Brothers Big Sisters, you've done a lot of things for that wonderful charity, but this is the Sea Scouts of America, and the mooring permit that you're looking to revoke today is for Josh Bellori. Josh Bellori doesn't have those mooring permits. The Sea Scouts have those permits. And
So you're suggesting,
I do think that Trustee McLaughlin also needs to recuse himself from any vote that might take place today, as he had some private conversations that took place with Mr. Bellori, which Mr. Bellori believes he was given reason to believe that it was okay to leave those moorings there.
I'm sorry.
Just
Yes.
as a fellow mooring user, I make sure my gear is out on December 1st. It's
Yes,
in
but
the
you don't
regs.
take out the Sea Scouts gear.
It doesn't matter whose mooring
Well,
it
you
is.
couldn't
have to
take out
it
my
out.
gear, right?
No, you take out your
Right.
own gear, but you
Right,
have to take
exactly.
it out because otherwise, like
So the
like Rich
responsible
said,
party
you
has
have
to
to
take
take it
care of
out.
their gear.
Otherwise, it becomes compromised and it will break. The shackles only have a finite life. You have to get them out every year.
so see,
This particular mooring has been examined by parties that will, if necessary, put it in an affidavit that they are in fact in good working order. I mean, I understand that you're upset that those boats didn't get out when you wanted them out, but they did get out as soon as the weather allowed. I mean, this, I believe, started back in March or something. I mean, certainly we couldn't move boats this winter in March, and I know that you know that.
So let me just get
All
this
the
clear.
trustees here are well aware of that.
So even though the vessels are registered to a such said party as Josh Bellori, and the moorings are I mean, according to our records, they're registered to Josh Bellori.
They're insured by Josh Bellori
They're
as well.
insured by Josh Bellori because the mooring is correspondence with the vessel.
I
So-
could insure Joe Lombardo's car if I wanted to, but Joe Lombardo was driving the car.
I doubt you could insure my
Yeah, but-
car. You don't have an insurable interest in the vehicle.
So, that's the way it goes.
Yeah, that's the
So it
problem.
could be registered to me, it could be insured by me, but I could let him drive my car. So then he wouldn't be the responsible party if the car was in an
And
accident.
it's
It
an
would come back to
expired
me.
registration on top of that.
Right.
so what
So I
you're,
think what we need to do is establish the moorings. Whose moorings are they?
May I ask
And
a
start
question?
clean.
May I ask a question? Is Josh Bellori associated with Sea Scout Ship 908?
I would provide that at the proper time.
I'm
if somebody wanted that
asking a
evidence.
question. Is he associated with them?
He is associated with that
Okay,
organization.
he made the application on behalf of the Sea Scouts. He signed for it. The vessels were registered to him. They're no longer registered. They were insured by him, so apparently he had an insurable interest to be able to register the vessel and to insure it. So the bottom line comes, did he have the authority, can you provide the authority
Just
that
like-
he had to do this on behalf of the Sea Scouts?
Just like Mr. Bellori is also a member of the Masons, but he certainly couldn't go to the village of Southampton and ask for a demolition permit to knock down the building. He wouldn't have that authority.
That's
simply
an
that you-
irrelevant argument, counsel.
Well,
Come
it's
on.
not an irrelevant argument because the person who is the owner of the property has to be named properly. So I'm perfectly willing to have a discussion with all of you and Mr. Bellori and see if we can work this out amicably, because I think that's what everyone wants to do. I don't think the trustees want to punish the Sea Scouts. I don't think they want the Sea Scout program to be nullified here in the town of
The
Southampton.
Sea Scouts, in my understanding, is a program, as you say. It's actually a program, I believe, under the Boy Scouts, right? It's part of the
That's my
Boy Scouts of America.
Yeah.
Sea Scouts is not technically an entity, it's a program, right?
This
So-
paperwork was accepted by the trustee's
So,
office,
well,
and
we
the
were-
permit
we
was
were-
granted, as I read from the minutes.
Right, we were engaged with Mr. Valori in trying to make accommodations in the interest of, helping people with autism and
That's what I was trying to do.
and get them out on the bay and whatnot. And we were gracious enough to waive fees, okay, because we
Absolutely.
care about this.
At his request.
At his request for quite some time, but with caveat, okay, please follow the rules and regulations. It's very, very simple. Amicably is what the trustees look to engage in at the beginning of this graciously. And it's unfortunate that we've gotten to this at this point in time where we're involving the Justice Court and a couple of distinguished officers that should be out on the bay right now, right? So.
And
where
a man
do we
who's
go
trying to make
here?
a
I mean,
living
I-
and having to pay
I would like to
to be
see
here
proof
today.
that he is affiliated officially with the Sea Scouts. He made the application on their behalf, so show us the proof that he had the authority to make this application on their behalf.
Right, and I don't have,
No, what I'm saying to you is he doesn't have a burden here. You have the burden of showing that mooring is actually owned by Josh Valori, which it's not owned by Josh Valori.
I don't have a problem with your request. Like you said, is there a way to sensibly or amicably work this out? I think that's what you said.
That's
don't-
exactly what I
That's
said.
exactly what you
The
said.
vessel that's affixed to the mooring is
There's no vessels affixed to any moorings at this time.
Right.
not at
Yeah,
this
they were
time.
finally
I don't
removed.
have an issue at this point in time based on what you're bringing up, adjourning this till the 2nd of June. And
Pardon me, I'm a grandmother to be. I know I don't look pregnant, and the shower is going to be at that time in Ohio, so it would have to be sometime thereafter.
okay, I mean, I don't know what the other trustees feel, but you brought a lot of stuff to light and we've brought a lot of stuff to light. And I think we need to get the cards on the table and figure out what exactly is going on here. Because the trustees endeavored to do a good thing, okay, for a good cause with just some simple caveats of following rules and regulations. And we've got a tremendous amount of issues to deal with right now. So, what's the
Would Monday
meeting?
the 16th work?
Well, let me ask my board members. Are you okay
Is
with
there
that?
going to be a recusal from
McLaughlin?
anyone?
No, there's no recusal needed. on
Would
this.
you be the 16th? Would you be okay with the 16th?
June? Sure.
We
Okay,
haven't taken
so
it.
I don't have a problem with adjourning this until the 16th. And I tell you what, when are you going to Ohio? I don't have a problem with having and continuing this conversation so that we could get to the bottom of what is going on here. Because, when we engage with people for good cause and to the point where we're passing official resolutions to waive fees, I think the other side of that equation is it's a two-way street. You have to kind of not,
Absolutely.
disrespect
And like I
that. And
said, there were certain persons who made representations to Mr. Valori that things were fine.
Well, this is a board and we move officially on resolutions and we take our regulations seriously. These things occur. That's why we have officers out there. That's why there's a whole justice court system.
Absolutely, and I
But-
appreciate that, especially making sure our waters are safe, because I certainly enjoy the water out here, and I don't like it when people are speeding around on their boats or their jet skis, or, unfortunately, putting people's lives at
Right.
risk because people have to go out and rescue them because they decide to go out without any life-saving equipment and things like that. And I
Right, and-
thank you very much for all the work you do.
Yeah, and the other side of it is that, there's a lot of knowledge that goes into, the rationale behind having those moorings removed so that the owner of the vessel doesn't damage doesn't risk damaging their own vessel or somebody else's vessel or other wetlands or property. We get storms, things break loose, and it becomes another problem. And that's why,
And that the vessels are in fact insured for the liability of such happenings.
Absolutely.
right.
There's a lot of question marks that are involved with
And
the
that we can
registration of these
discuss too,
vehicles.
because that is in fact taken care of.
Correct. We want to see that the representations that were made are
Because we're not
matching up.
putting children on boats without insurance, I can assure you.
Insurance, and also whether it's been Coast Guard certified. If this is gonna be a vessel whereby you put an autistic child on, you'd wanna make sure that you have the correct safety procedures in place that are on that vessel for a six-pack registered vessel. If that's as little as a actual card that you're gonna get who's operating the vessel, I would guess it would be a 100-ton master in somebody that's actually operating that vessel. So
And,
for
well,
all
you may not
intents
be
and
aware, some of,
purposes-
we're saying children, but a lot of these persons are also have become into adulthood, and then they still have this disability, and they still get the benefit of going out on the
What we're
boat.
basically saying is we don't want a fly-by-night operation that has an expired registration to a vessel that's not corresponding to the actual ownership of the vessel and the mooring. You know, we want a.
And I think, like Trustee Horowitz said, we can probably sit down and resolve
Well,
this all.
look, and you know what? Unfortunately, we all witnessed what happened this weekend with the Mexican Navy in New York Harbor, okay? So, you know what? We don't want to have issues, okay? God, you know, a terrible situation. People lost their lives. Terrible situation. Let's figure out
It had
what's.
nothing to do with moorings.
I understand that, but it has to do with maritime rules and regulations and safety, and you're talking about passengers out on a vessel. You have to go to the highest degree of safety, and you got to be very careful, and that's what we want to do. So let's do this. Let's
And I
adjourn.
mean, I don't know all of the details, and I'm sure no one in this room does, of what happened with that vessel. And I'm sure that vessel was registered and insured, and there was a lot of safety protocol that was going on. Sometimes it's just what we call an unfortunate accident as well.
Sure.
And just like, let's please all be respectful of those lives that were lost.
Absolutely. Let's entertain a second to my motion to adjourn this to the 16th of June.
second it.
Seconded by
And
Trustee
could we
Warren.
possibly do 2 p.m.?
Well, we're not going. We can't change our. We
Okay.
can't change our 1 o'clock meeting schedule. We're going to start at 1. Maybe your public hearing would start at, 1:20 or 1:30.
Okay.
You
Fair
know, depending upon. We saw. I want to get these gentlemen back out where they need to be, so we're taking this out of turns to get them working.
Mr. President, we can always take it out of turn if we all
Well, we
agreed
could-
on
we
it.
I
could-
just have an
could-
appointment with
we
my
could-
oncologist that day, so it's
Well,
at 1 o'clock. So I will
No,
try
we-
to change that and
If
try to
we
be
could
here
do
as
all our
fast
other business and do it on the tail end, if that's the case, and then it may be closer to 2.
That would be, I
Yeah.
would very much appreciate
Yeah,
that. 'cause
that we
These
could do.
appointments are hard to get.
Take you out of order at the end of the meeting instead of the
Thank
beginning.
you.
Perhaps
Thank
we
you
can plan for that.
Thank you for all of your time.
Get me the-
Are we all in favor on the adjournment?
And you have my phone.
No, I don't.
All right.
You used to work at a courthouse. I didn't have your phone number.
May I approach?
You may approach, and then I got to get back on schedule. I want to thank you, gentlemen, for
Thanks,
your
fellas.
participation here, for advising the trustees. We're done, we're closed.
I can't say anything? I want you to say thank you.
You've got counsel.
Oh, no.
Oh, I can't say anything.
Yeah. No. We're adjourned, yeah. All right,
Thank you.
next.
Haven't seen you in a while.
Listen,
Yes.
we've got a meeting, sir.
Ed, it's good to see you, man.
It's a,
Take care.
it's a,
We'll be seeing you in 2 weeks. Yeah.
okay.
Okay, take care.
All right, let's go back to our regularly scheduled agenda, if that's okay with you guys. I would like to go to the discussions. We have these learning segments going on relative to the treated wood products, and I want to continue on with that. You have the floor, sir. If you could state your name for the record, sign in.
Thank you, Jeff Miller with the Treated Wood Council. Thank you again for inviting me. I've got a few slides. We'll just go through these a little bit quickly because I know there's some important townspeople here that want to get on with certain things that they have that are important to them. I want to call your attention to that slide. It's the first slide. The picture at 3 o'clock on that slide, I'm going to come back to that right at the end, but that's a picture that I took of a pier in a gazebo type structure at the end of the pier. But just keep that in mind. We're going to come back to that at the end. But you asked me to come and talk about the science of environmental risks associated with treated wood materials used on the waterfront area. And all of those pictures there represent materials that are currently used on the waterfront. That picture at 3 o'clock was taken down near where I live in South Carolina. The background picture is Hilton Head Island. Okay.
Is the pressing the button for the next slide?
Yeah, it's blinking.
There's 2 arrows here. Okay, agenda. Just a few things on the agenda. The science of environmental exposure from treated wood has been studied for 40 years. And I don't want to go through all the individual studies that have been done, but I do want to go through 3 kind of composite studies that looked at all of those other 40 years worth of studies and summarize them with some conclusions. This is a recap, and I'll move right through that because it just goes over what we've been through already.
It's all right, you can touch on the points if you want. If you need to take a few more minutes for your thoroughness, it's fine.
Just let me know when because it's not working, so let me know when you want.
It's not going backwards?
You want to go back?
Yeah, let him go back one.
Just one. We met in March, talked about some of the uses of treated wood, the codes, the regulations, the laws out there that allow certain types of treated wood to be used. They ban certain other types of treated wood. Here in New York State, there's a ban, for instance, a statewide ban on the use of creosote-treated pilings used in waterways. That's been in effect for somewhere between 15 and 20 years right now. So we're not talking about creosote-treated wood in any of these discussions because it's outlawed here in New York State.
Want to go to the next page? There you go.
Next page. First study was done by EPA. And EPA does a study of all pesticides that are used in the country. This is a copy of the cover page of a registration review decision by EPA for chromated arsenicals that are the core of the CCA treated wood pilings that would be used, that are used everywhere from the Gulf of Mexico up the Atlantic coast and on the West Coast.
I see it's 2021.
The EPA study findings were issued in 2021, yes. They are required under the federal law to register and re-register pesticides on a 15-year increment. So the previous review was completed in 2008, and this is the next one after that, which was completed in December of 21. And somewhere 5-6 years from now, they will start another review so that they can complete it in that 15-year increment. Just one slide, and this covers the findings of what EPA found and came to the conclusion in that study. And just a couple of highlighted points. Every pesticide that's used has to be scientifically reviewed by EPA. And it includes the exposures, the environmental, the public health exposures. They came to the conclusion that those particular pesticides that would be used in the wood here pose no unreasonable risk of adverse effects to human health or the environment. I'll digress a little bit and say, are there exposures? Yes, there are. There's an exposure caused by all kinds of treated wood that's used. There's an exposure caused by any other alternative material, whether it's steel, whether it's concrete, whether it's plastic. All of those items have an exposure and have an effect on the environment. And everything we do has an effect on the environment. But the key item, the key word in that whole white box that I want to point out to everybody is that very first word, and it's an acronym called FIFRA. And FIFRA is the Federal Insecticide, Rodenticide, Fungicide Act. And that's the statute that requires EPA to conduct that risk assessment that scientific risk assessment for the use of the pesticides. Of the materials that could be used as an alternative to treated wood, none of them are required to do anything under FIFRA because none of them are a pesticide. So treated wood has the unique requirement in statute to require the people who produce it, the people that want to use it, to go out and study the material and make sure that there's no adverse, unreasonable risk caused by that use. I'm going to get into what those risks are, how long they might last, where they might affect things, and what some of the conclusions are. The next cumulative report is one put out by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, a guideline. This goes back to 2009, and it has a unique finding in it. This goes to address the issue of if there's an exposure, where does it go and how long does it last? And this one, let's just focus on the CCA table for salt water, and you see that there's a leachable amount that comes out in the first day, which is 2.72. And that's micrograms per centimeter per day. And by 2 to 3 months later, it's virtually undetectable. So there is a small amount that comes out in the first 2 or 3 months that that material is being used. After that time, then virtually nothing. Another National Marine Fisheries study put out in 2006, cumulative study of technical review information. And if I could make this work. Okay. That previous slide showed the time factor. This shows the distance factor of what happens to the material. And in a nutshell, it says that materials settle, that leach out, settle in the sediments below the piling. And on this one, you can see that within that first meter around the piling, there's a larger concentration of the material. And then once you move away, and the language adjacent to that table in the report said, within 1 meter is where all the material falls, and beyond 1 meter, it's almost undetectable. It goes back to background levels. So we've reached a point where the release of the material occurs in the first couple of months, and it affects the 1 meter circumference around the piling. This is all that scientific stuff. These are some of the summarized versions of what's in that technical report. In each one of these, it shows what we just went through. The distance that the material leaches to is within 1 to 3 meters, and the time of effect is in the first 1 to 3 months. Conclusions for all of these show no significant environmental impact, no measurable impact to the environment. In one of the most sensitive critters out there is the baby salmon that was tested, and it shows no effect on the salmonoid population in that test. The Went study, again, no evidence of adverse effects on the resident biota of the waterway and the surrounding areas. Conclusions from that, again, we'll go through this. Just at the bottom in the bolder letters, can be safely used with appropriately treated wood. We get back to the recommendations later on. That there is some leaching, but nothing significantly high enough to pose an ecological risk to the waterways. Again, a few meters are the effect, and a few months are the longevity of the impact. This is a life cycle assessment study that was done in 2012 of CCA treated marine pilings. We're getting very close to the end. And this slide kind of shows the impact to different types of the air, to the water, to greenhouse gases, to, if you look at all of these little tables up there, they're a comparison between treated wood pilings, concrete pilings, steel pilings, and plastic pilings. If you go across the bottom to where it says eutrophication, that's the impact on water. And the one with the highest levels are steel and concrete. The impact to the water, comparison analyses. The worst one is steel. Second worst is concrete, very similar to it. Concrete is the black one. The next one above eutrophication is concrete, almost the same. On the right-hand side of those two are plastics. That's down by about 20%, and the treated wood one is reduced by 50%. The impact, very small. And the comparison of all of them, treated wood comes out, in fact, to have the lowest impact on waterways. This is a quantified amount of the release. And I put this on here because what I'm trying to demonstrate is, yes, there are materials coming out of any kind of piling, but they are so small that they're almost undetectable. The last one on the tables is the percentage of overall impact. And again, if you go across eutrophication, you find levels for all of those materials that are at 0.00234%. So you add another couple of zeros on top of that to get a whole number. None of these materials are going to have an impact on the environment. I just don't believe it, and the science doesn't show that. I did a little comparison in that life cycle assessment of the release of copper, which is the most dangerous of any of the components in there. And it shows that for the release of the CCA, the copper release from the CCA piling is 0.02 pounds of copper per year, per piling. If you have a 50-foot boat that has a professional grade anti-foulant paint on it, it's 1.5. So that's 50, 70 times higher, that one boat, the release of copper. If you have a 10 piling dock, 0.2 pounds coming out of that, twice as much out of a 25-foot boat that's parked there. You add all of those together, and there's still no effect. We went through some suggested actions that we had offered to the trustees in terms of modifying the rules and regulations for the town, in the town code, and I think you have these already. Using a wood product that is treated with a pesticide that has to be registered by EPA. It has to be in accordance with the state environmental conservation law. Treated in accordance with AWPA standards. Those are the standards we talked about before that specify how much material has to be in the wood. Wood treated with CCA in New York, New Jersey, New England is lower than the amount that's treated in southern states. because of the warmer waters and the higher degree of degradation in the warmer waters. And then, all right, let's move to the last two slides. This is the slide of the picture that was in that very first slide. And you see, this is a walkway, a catwalk extension out to a gazebo structure in the middle of salt water outside Hilton Head. That structure's been there for, well, I know it was there when I first got down there in '05, and I moved there first from New York and then from New Jersey. So it's at least 20 years. If you look at 3 o'clock, this is in my bank of photos that I took back last summer. You see the small little pilings at 9 o'clock on that picture. You can just see the tops of the pilings. And I never noticed this when I first got this picture, first looked at it. But those tops of those pilings are an extension of a dock that goes out to the left. And that dock sits on pilings or tied to pilings so that the entire dock goes up and down with the tides. And our tides are 4 to 5 to 6 feet. You can tell by the water level on the ones in front that you can see. And then I happened to look at this one other picture that I never had before. And it's harder to see, but this is a long view of it. And you can see that dock extension on the right-hand side. What you may not be able to see is at the end of that dock are 2 people fishing. And it struck me, you see those little things that are standing up there. The piling is, if those 2 people are let's say 6 foot tall, those pilings are 12. They're fishing. And I got the sense that if this was a hazardous environment, all of that wood, all of that exposure, all of that potential leaching, would they be somewhere else fishing rather than on there? And it just struck me that this was an ironic picture of the use of that facility for organisms from small to large in and around this particular structure. Can't blow that up, can you? I don't think so. No.
I can see.
Any questions that I can answer?
I just have a quick question that I noticed. The freshwater and the saltwater differences were kind of like, there was definitely, you could see some variation between high salinity environments. And so I'm guessing that the graph is pretty much, if most of our embayments are 20, 25 parts, the salinity, is it a linear graph, or when you go from freshwater to oceanic water, or is it?
I think they're totally different. There's not one compared to the other. You mean the?
Well, there was. I mean, you had up on the chart. There was a difference between the leaching of the CCA in freshwater environments versus oceanic water environments. So, what I was wondering, is it a linear graph as you go up, as you go down in salinity? Is it less or more leaching?
There's less leaching. There's less leaching in fresh water.
So, but what I'm asking is as you go down, I mean, it's not really shown there. You can't really see it.
But salt content in the water.
So is this based on salt content?
I don't believe so. It wouldn't make sense. I mean, they just went to a saltwater area and did the analysis and did the testing. Whoever did the testing. And
no, I understand. I just didn't know if there was linear, because you have like 35 parts per thousand, which is oceanic, and virtually none of the docks in our town, if we were to use CCA, would be in 35 parts per thousand. The majority of it would be in 20 parts per thousand, 15 parts.
So you think the numbers could actually be less?
Yeah, so I'm saying the numbers would be less as you go closer towards.
Intuitively, I would say yes.
Yeah, but we don't have like an actual like graph of that.
No, I've never seen one.
Okay.
See the.
Okay.
Could I just ask a question?
Yeah.
That area in Hilton Head, is that an active shellfish harvesting area?
That one in South Carolina,
Yes,
it is not.
it's not.
No.
I'm going to ask you another question. Do you think some pesticides is better than no pesticides in a shellfish area?
Sorry, would you
Is it
repeat?
better to have some pesticides in a shellfish harvesting area or no pesticides?
I don't know. Sometimes pesticides are used strictly for a aquatic environment. In other words,
Right.
they're applied to an aquatic environment to kill certain things like algae. And
But we
coppers.
we don't use that sort of stuff here in our shellfish, habitats. So
I
I'm
think a
thinking that no
precautionary
pesticides is better than some
precautionary thing says
pesticides.
if there's an area that is a cultivation area for oysters and clams and things like that,
Right.
you probably don't want to use pesticides unless they're permitted for application, and there are some that are used to
Yeah, I mean, Suffolk County vector sprays every season.
Yeah, and that's not great either.
Right, but
Saying that's a good thing.
I think that the point is that you have areas, like use Smith's Creek for an example, where you're down at the end of a creek and you have, you're lined with bulkheads, and you're in an area that's not ever gonna be harvestable shellfish-wise. And you're gonna take a tropical hardwood out of a rainforest, process it. You're gonna take somebody's word that it's sustainably sourced, but I doubt it. Process it, put it on a container ship with a huge carbon footprint, ship it across the ocean, bring it here, and we're gonna jam it into some mud that no one's ever going clamming at. It's never, you'd have to take this stuff to some type of a Superfund site. It just doesn't make common sense.
Well, and it's never been tested.
Well,
The
actually-
tropical
well, yeah, the
hardwood
tropical
leaching-
hardwood, right.
Leaching, what leaches out of a tropical hardwood has never been tested. This has been extensively tested.
Right, so you don't know what that's doing.
Yeah.
And the
I know tea tree oil burns when I get it on my skin.
Let me just tell you something else. What I noticed about your picture that you had is that there are no bands. I didn't see any bands on those pilings.
on top.
Yeah, I don't see any bands on those pilings. But yet, if you used to take a tropical hardwood piling, you have to like double band that thing because it's going to open up like a bouquet of flowers, right? And you're going to be replacing and you're going to be stirring the bottom up more. And so who knows what's going on with that? So look, when you have the state of New York Department of Environmental Conservation, you have the EPA, you have all these other regulatory authorities that have extensively looked at this and tested it. No one's talking about feeding it to an oyster farm or clam sanctuaries and stuff. You're talking about utilizing it under strict regulation in areas where, you're not going to get splinters from whatever your precautions are, but use it in a marine construction process where you're not going to have to go back and redo these things. I think that from an enforcement standpoint and a longevity of a project standpoint, we have to take a hard look at this. We have to keep learning about this because it just seems that, some of the regulations like defying common sense in certain areas. I mean, I'm looking at, things that are down at the end of these canals and creeks, or as used as dead men buried underneath, not even in the water, not even touching the water, and we're still harming our environment globally, and we've all learned the effects of global issues. Not to mention, is there a tariff? Is there not a tariff? This is domestically sourced material, right, under strict, requirements of our country, without incurring a giant carbon footprint across the ocean. So, you guys maybe have some more questions. I've been looking at this and looking at everybody else's regulations.
I'd like to just point out, I have a copy of some trustee meeting minutes from 1996 when a letter was received and read into the record. We would like to point out that after Smith's Creek was dredged and cleaned up in the 60s, the trustees allowed a large amount of dock building and bulkheading where CCA treated wood was used. The present pollution problem in this creek is predominantly due to the leaching of these heavy metals, chromium, copper, and arsenic from the bulkheads and docks installed over the last 30 years. So it's not without damage and it's not without issues. I think to myself about this article from The Onion that I read a bunch of years ago that said the EPA was considering changing the name just to the A and dropping the E and the P, just becoming just the agency. I personally don't think that the EPA is always looking out for the best interests of the local municipalities. Same thing with DEC. I think it's up to us, and on the east end of Long Island and many other municipalities, we have taken the stand ourselves to ensure that these products are not used because of the potential impacts on shellfish. Same thing with DEC. Yeah, there may be a incongruity with DEC's regulations and ours, but DEC allows a lot of the dock permits to go up 18 inches. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to rubber stamp it every time they say yes. We have local control that we want to enact to ensure what we feel is the healthiest and best options for our bays.
Yeah, but you can't paint, it's like, we're talking about apples and oranges here, because if the science shows that it's not traveling, it's not leaching, it's not moving beyond, hold on, if you're down at the end of Smith's Creek, it's never getting to any place where we have a shellfish sanctuary, right? So you got to look at this, and you got to look at it from a much bigger perspective. And again, you have a lot of other regulatory authorities that have studied it and are opining, and they're looking at this. And these materials that we have been using are not holding up. And furthermore, I was looking at what you're showing about concrete and what steel does into our waterway, but yet we're not choking down on that. And they're finding microplastics in all of us. So we're using vinyl bulkhead. So, there's no material that we're going to have that's going to go without risk. None of it. And I think what you have to do is, or what we have to do is take a look at common sense and make determinations that we're never going to put pesticides in a shellfish sanctuary or anywhere near a shellfish sanctuary. But when you get down into the end of Weesick or just these canals and areas where you don't have that same situation, that same dynamic, take a look at what the other regulatory authorities that are involved on those projects are doing, especially when enforcement becomes an issue as well. And are we really making the right decision? Maybe it's not an all or none situation. This may work for this application and it's not going to work for that application. I think it warrants a closer look, and a lot of these things have not been a closer look, including what do the tannins leach coming from these tropical hardwoods that have not been studied.
Yeah, I just want to, along the lines of what Scott's going with that, I just wanted to just ask you a quick question about the process whereby CPA becomes impregnated in the soft grains of the wood, because majority of these projects are new growth forests. The same as such with all the tropical hardwoods that we're getting are new growth forests. And I believe that's why there's a misnomer that the tropical hardwoods actually hold up, because tropical hardwoods in the past that were utilized in marine environments were old growth forests, and that the tannins were actually holding into the grains. Now it's very evident that we're finding as these new growth tropical hardwoods are utilized, that because there's such a failure in the wood, that the reasoning being is that the tannins actually leach from the new growth grains. Now, how is the process of CCA impregnating the copper within the new growth forest grains? Because
I can explain that kind of simply. When a tree is cut down, its bark is removed, it's shaved into the diameter that is needed for a piling or a pole. A pole would be very similar to a piling. And they're then sized according to length and diameter for different applications. So if you're using a foundation piling that is going to hold up a house or an apartment or something like that, it's a larger diameter piling. If it's only going to hold up a dock that's still heavy, but not the kind of weight that's in that, it would be a smaller diameter piling. So they're all sized according to the length and diameter. But all of them are softwoods grown in the southeast. And they are of the southern yellow pine species. They're treated in a steel cylinder. So it's typically 6 to 8 feet in diameter and anywhere from 50 to 150 feet long. And the wood is put on little railroad cars and slid into the cylinder. And then it's all sealed up. And at that point, the cylinder goes into 3 stages. It goes into a vacuum stage, which draws moisture out of the wood, water out of the wood. That allows the preservative, that is water-based preservative, to be put into the wood. So once they draw the vacuum out, remove the water from in the wood, then they fill up the entire cylinder to the top with a water-based CCA solution, typically a 5 to 10% solution. And then the entire cylinder is put under pressure, 8 to 10 times atmospheric pressure. So that under pressure, that liquid water is then pushed into all the cells of the wood. Once that is complete, and there's a time lag for that, and it runs between an hour and an hour and a half, then all the water is removed and the entire cylinder is then put under vacuum. And that draws the surface 1/4 of an inch of solution that's on the outside layer of the wood out of the wood. So you're going to get a piling 25 feet long, a foot in diameter, that has virtually no preservative on the outside 1/4 of an inch, but it's all on the inside.
But that then ties into what we discussed the last time you were here, which is we have these marine amphipods called gribbles that will actually consume and eat the wood. And then they are constantly exposing new wood to be leached, as well as consuming some of the CCA, and then they in turn get consumed by crabs, fish, humans. You know, it's not great to have this sort of chemical bioaccumulate in, you know, food
Well,
for
I
consumption.
think we went through the science that shows for real life experiences that leaching ends at a 2 to 3 month period. It goes down so they can't detect it anymore. So it's not coming out anymore at the measurable amount, at the detectable amount. And
Right,
what
but
did
is
come out,
that in areas where the wood is being predated by these marine amphipods, or is that in an area where there are no amphipods?
I don't have an answer to that. I don't know.
Right. So you can imagine how in an area where there are marine amphipods, it's that what you're telling me doesn't apply,
But
and
this
it's
is
actually worse.
saltwater area that they're testing.
Right.
So I have confidence that, and you look at that picture, and that's 20 years old.
Well, actually, one thing, Scott, you mentioned the lack of bands. Does it freeze there?
Does it have what?
Do you get hard winters where liquid water gets into the pilings and then freezes, causing the expansion?
I don't think that's the issue. I
Well,
think it's just,
you're talking about bands. I mean, that's why we have
bands
bands,
on the
because of the
top.
freezing.
That's what's
no,
naturally-
they just open up anyway. They just naturally open up. That stuff just opens up. It's not about the freezing. It's just that material just opens up and it does not hold up. You have to ban those, you have to ban them, or that project is doomed to failure. And it's like, if you go, you had a slide up there, how many, the amount coming out of the bottom of a 50-foot boat painted or a 25-foot boat painted. I'll take you back to Smith's Creek for a minute.
Right there.
You talk about how many boat bottoms were painted there and how many boats were in that very, very small area over the course of decades and decades and decades. I would say, based on the science that we know now and looking at this, what really created a lot of the problem there could have been just that right there. Not the pilings, but the amount of bottom paint that there was going on in that area and all those boats sitting there and so on and so forth. So to say that it's the pilings or it's this wood material, and again, even back then, if you go farther back, they were using creosote because we all went down there fishing, snappers and whatnot, came home with creosote all over our shorts and our skin burning. We've gone a long way forward from that, and it's been studied substantially. And again, no one's talking about grinding it into an oyster farm, right? So you're just trying to learn, from these other regulatory authorities that have a lot bigger budget than we have on the science side of this in terms of where are we really, doing good and where are we doing harm? And there's going to be risk in everything that we do. There's nothing that's going to be an absolute zero. Every medication that we take has a side effect. You have to weigh that out.
And the
you-
education that he gave us with the vacuum process at the end of it, whereby it's removing at 1/4 of an inch so that you're not having the instant impact when the thing goes in. I mean,
We're also talking about soft woods, which degrade rapidly when being banged into by boats or chewed up by marine amphipods. One thing that the tropical hardwood, not that I'm crazy about that, but at least it's a hard wood and it doesn't splinter, doesn't fracture, doesn't shear off when it's hit when it's cold. I was told about in East Hampton, they have issues where they found that the CCA pilings would literally break off at the waterline when they'd get hit when it was cold.
And that hardwood probably does more damage to the boat than the boat does to the hardwood.
Well, boat has fenders and boats thereby
Even
voluntarily.
these pilings we use today will, at the waterline at times, they'll break off.
You said that there's a review every 15 years. Now, when is that review up? You said it's up this year, next year. When's there's a 15-year review? When's up again? The review, you mentioned that there's a 15-year review?
Yes.
When is that now? When is that review completed?
The next one will have to be completed by 36.
Okay.
2036. 15-year statutory
When
requirement.
was the last review completed?
The last one
The last one, yeah.
was completed in 21.
Okay.
I'm going to need to see some of these examples of these hardwood that are failing. I keep hearing anecdotally about them, but I haven't actually seen any myself. Sure, I'll come take a look because I can show you plenty of
Chip will take you on a tour.
Yeah.
Chip will be on the.
I have a quick question. As far as tissue samples of the finfish and shellfish, specifically the chemicals that are used in wood treatment, have you done any analysis of it to see if there's any bioaccumulation in these tissues? I know you said there's 15-year review. Have they actually taken any of the, these fish and shellfish that are in harvestable areas and done an actual analysis?
The best one, I think, is the one that was done with the baby salmon, which showed no impact on they're the more sensitive than the big guys.
Because I know plastics, everybody thinks plastics out of sight, out of mind, but we're learning that in the oceans it's full of microplastics, and all the fish and birds and everything is eating them, and we're the next up on the food chain eating that. So is this something that I have to be worried about as a shell fisherman selling shellfish to people that maybe have potential issues with these chemicals, or is this something that the FDA has basically said it's not an issue?
They have FDA has done, and I don't know. I'm an oyster fan myself, and I sort of trust FDA to be able to say, are they safe? Are they not safe? Are they safe in certain areas? And you can go buy oysters at a restaurant from all different areas at different times of the year, whenever the harvesting season is. So I don't see any serious risk. There's always a risk. You can always get mercury poisoning from fish somewhere, but
No, I'm not going to dispute that, because I know we're talking about the chemicals that are treated with the wood. We're also looking at tropical hardwoods that have naturally occurring tannins in them that we have no idea what they're doing to the environment and what they're doing to the, if it's an oil, it's actually going to leach out and go further out than the ones that you're talking about with the pilings.
remember remember we went back to that one of the first slides, that first word was FIFRA, which is the pesticide statute, and natural hardwoods aren't evaluated in any way, shape, or form as compared to treated wood, because treated wood has a pesticide in it. Natural hardwoods don't have any added pesticide to them.
Yeah.
So it's not even evaluated.
Yeah, because I've only been on this board for 19 years. I know the boards before us wrangled with banning the treated lumbers and using tropical hardwoods. Well, come fast forward 2025, the the tropical rainforests are getting cut down at a rate faster than, and not managed properly. So are we saving, one thing here and hurting another thing in another part of the world? You got plastics that we use for vinyl bulkheads that are getting bioaccumulating, microplastics in the environment. We got the stuff that leaches out of cement, that leaches out of steel. So I don't think we have an answer that's perfect, but we're looking to get as well educated as we can, so that if we change or adopt any new regulations, that's going to have the least negative impact on the environment.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. I mean, if you think about it also, if you're really into the environment, it's a global issue. And if you are harming a rainforest, it could have effects several continents, 2 continents over. If you're changing, people talk about our climate change and all this. Well, this is all part of it. So you have to use common sense at times, and you got to look at this. And, it's been studied by, many people that have a lot bigger scientific budgets than we have that allow not carte blanche. There are regulations that go along with this. As I said, you're never grinding it into an oyster farm. It's just not going to happen. But in certain areas, it may make sense. And we don't know. We're at the learning phase right now. And I appreciate you, who have obviously a lot more expertise in this than the average person walking around here, helping us learn about this, because we want to make good decisions, sensible decisions.
You asked me to kind of give you a report on the science. And this is all of the science thrown together in summaries in 3 or 4 different reports, and all of them come to the same conclusion.
Well,
and I think it's all based upon that science.
Right. I've had discussions with the state DEC about this, in terms of why, and they said, hey, basically, look, we have regulations on it. You need to follow the regulations that we already have on it, and it's fine. Don't get outside of the regulations that already exist. And I think that there's something to be said for consistency in policy, especially when enforcement becomes an issue. It's a problem.
One thing that I see is that by us doing our due diligence here and banning treated lumber, and the rest of basically the state of New York still allows it, and water has no boundaries. So I think that pretty much speaks it all.
But
we're saving a little piece of the pie where the bigger piece of the pie might be, getting damaged. We don't know. That seems to be the problem.
But once again, the east end of Long Island, every municipality has banned it and restricted it. We're not the only ones.
I don't think Brookhaven has.
Yeah, we don't want to be,
Right.
but I don't think Brookhaven is to be, modeled after.
Yeah, but we also don't know what the tropical hardwoods, and they're not holding up. So, and we have science that's showing us that CCA is in fact not as bad as we once thought when this was brought before the board before. So we do have to actually look at it. We have a scientific expert. We're probably going to have another scientific person that we're going to discuss with that probably doesn't have as much of an affiliation with the actual industry. So we could discuss the matter and make a conscious decision whereby it might be, when it comes to cost effectiveness for the people that are surrounding these bays, it's incredible. I mean, the cost of a tropical hardwood versus the cost of having a yellow pine CCA treated within the United States is going to be a hell of a lot cheaper and more cost effective for the taxpayer that's paying the trustees and the town of Southampton to do a project, or the taxpayer that owns something on the water and is changing their bulkhead over. So we do have to analyze it.
We're also, once again, we're talking about bucking 20 years of standard practice on the east end.
But that's.
But we're not bucking any state practice.
No, I don't.
The state lets me harvest 10 bushels of scallops. Can I harvest 10 bushels of scallops in Southampton town waters?
We're talking about apples and oranges. I think that, you have to evolve. You have to learn as science evolves and you get more data and information, and you kind of look what's going on, and no one's talking about a broad brush. We're going.
Oh.
It's about common sense and where it's sensible to use these things or not. And this is not a public hearing where we're making any decisions, so don't worry about that. Okay, this is about the board learning if the practices that we have are sensible? Are they enforceable even? I don't know, you know? When there's consistency among regulatory authorities, maybe the next set of conversations has to be had with the regulatory authorities around the table to say, listen, who's doing this wrong? You or our, you know, what's going on? How do we tie this all in where it makes sense? Because as Trustee Warner pointed out, the water it just flows all over. It crosses a boundary and now it's on our bottomlands. It's on our jurisdiction, but it's coming out of the next jurisdiction over. And if there's no detectability in it, what are we doing by, you know, putting more pressure and expense on everything? And furthermore, a bigger global footprint, you know, carbon footprint on it in how we're moving these materials around. It looks to me like the bigger culprit is the painting of boat bottoms, right? And I don't see anybody walking around saying no more painted boat bottoms in our waterways, right? That's not a sensible proposition. So we got to really take a hard look at this.
But with the facts that he's giving us, he's saying that his product will put copper, chromium, arsenic, which is a carcinogen, into our bay bottom.
Yeah, but
it's going there. It's going to be there. He's going to add more of it
And
if
what
we
are
allow.
the effects of tea tree tannins that are going into the waterways?
Don't really know. I know
We don't
tea
know.
tree is a very effective antimicrobial. I use
Yeah.
it sometimes for fish
You
infections.
don't really want an antibacterial either going on.
It's not
Look
a
at
carcinogen,
everything
I'll say
going
that
into our waterways from the antiquated septic systems that we have. Medications are going into our waterway. All types of things are going into our waterway. There is going to be nothing we do that doesn't have some form of risk. You know, the medicine you take to control your cholesterol gives you some side effects, but without it, you know, you have bigger problems. So this is a good conversation of people learning and figuring out where's common sense here.
I think we've had a really good presentation from the treated wood people educating us. I'd like to reach out maybe to Stony Brook College and Chris Gobler and let him give us his little expertise on what he thinks, how the environment.
I spoke to him. He told me to speak to Judith Weiss. I spoke to Judith Weiss. We could invite her to come.
Well, I would like to have, get a balanced, so we get a balanced determination.
I would like to directly hear from the other regulatory authorities.
So
that's what I'd like to hear.
But I think we thank you for the scientific information that's brought to you by who you're representing, and it's very educational for us to make an informed decision.
Correct. Thank you.
You're very welcome, and you can always contact me if you have anything else.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to the next.
Well,
we don't have a public hearing.
It's not a public hearing.
Just a discussion.
All right.
All right, so we have another discussion on here. It involves the Village of West Hampton Dunes Village Improvement District. It's a shoreline stabilization project. I see we have the mayor of West Hampton Dunes here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for coming there, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate your participation. If you could just, before you start, just state your
Sure.
name for the record and sign in.
Sure. Okay, good afternoon. My name is Carlos Vargas. I'm from VHB Engineering. We're out based in Hauppauge, New York, at 100 Motor Parkway. I am a project manager for waterfront and coastal marine projects, and also have other team members with me here today. With me here in person, I have David Kennedy to my left. He is a professional wetland scientist, and thank you, and permitting guru. I also have on virtual, I have Michael Mann, who's also he's our senior coastal engineer who's been working on the project for the past year and a half. Has backgrounds of permitting, designing, and engineering coastal projects, marinas worldwide. So he has a boatload of experience. And we also have Neville Reynolds, who is our coastal engineering and practice leader, who is based out in Virginia. Was a contributed to natural and nature-based features in Virginia. So he's been associated with shoreline stabilization projects with VIMS, the Virginia Institute of Marine Science, with a few of those faculty and staff there, developing shoreline management plans for various municipalities, counties, National Park Service, and the such. So thank you, members of the board and Mr. President and the staff of the trustees for giving us this opportunity to present today. So I will present to you today the Village Improvement District Shoreline Stabilization Project, which is a pilot project for the bay side of the Village of West Hampton Dunes. So a little bit about us, as you heard. So our coastal practice is, like I said, is based out of Virginia and the Chesapeake Bay area. They've been doing natural nature-based features, marine projects since the, I would say, late 80s, early 90s. And they've had successive projects there. And if you're not familiar with VIMS or the Virginia Institute of Marine Science, they've been leading the way with stabilizing their shorelines there and managing their shorelines. And what is actually a really good mindset of how they permit and how they operate down there in Virginia. The permitting agencies down there, they actually, in order to manage a shoreline or permit a shoreline, you need to prove otherwise that a natural nature-based feature is not going to work, as opposed to doing a hardened gray traditional structure like a bulkhead or a revetment. So they have a general permit for natural nature-based features, as opposed to where, if you compare it to New York State, we have a general permit for bulkheads. So just understanding the mindset there. One other thing, we also have a representative from the Village Improvement District here as well in the audience. So just wanted to mention that. So let's get into the project. The project site is in Moriches Bay. It's on the bay side, and it's in that small little red square, as you can see there, just east of that sand spit there. That area actually is the historic area, or very, very near, of the historic breach that happened in 1993, and during that Halloween nor'easter that occurred over a few days, maybe 5 days. Here's another close-up of it. The Village Improvement District is an actual district that was codified in the Village Code, and it was the purpose of that codification of that district was for shoreline stabilization purposes only. So that area is exhibiting, we'll get into it, but it's exhibiting a lot of shoreline loss and shoreline erosion. This is the public available wetland mapping that we have here, showing on the left, showing the New York State DEC tidal wetland demarcations, and on the right side, it's showing the National Wetlands Inventory designations as well. So the existing conditions of this site, this site has quite a long history of shoreline stabilization attempts. There's been at least, I would say, 4 or 5 attempts to stabilize the shoreline here. There's been, you can see in these photos here, there's been the post-Sandy super sacks that are filled with sand attempts to stabilize the shorelines. There's been, on the left side, you're seeing a rock core dune. You're only seeing what's left of that rock core dune. It's just the core itself. They've done everything from beach nourishment twice, and they lost all of their shoreline stabilization through nor'easters as well. They've done the zigzagging of the snow fencing, and same thing. There's been many attempts of shoreline stabilization that have not fared well here at this site. And by the way, this is also a typical situation on the north shore of the barrier island of West Hampton Dunes. It's not uncommon that the residents there exhibit so much loss that they have to add another riser to their steps because they lost elevation. They're seeing shoreline recession happen in real time. One thing to note too, I mean, we'll go through it, but in this photo here, you'll see a 24-year history of the shoreline recession. To summarize it, each line of that that you see there is a representation of the rack line or the shoreline from 2001 to 2025. And in summary, in 24 years, you have a 31 to 56 foot horizontal loss, which averages out to about 41.4 feet of shoreline loss. And in our coastal report, we prepared a coastal report that, again, Michael will get into, but it averages out to about 2 to 3 average high water shoreline loss per year. So I'll take a step back and kind of go back to how I discussed what VHB's done for coastal shore resilience and coastal resilience shorelines projects in Virginia. So we'll present a project here that's this is on the James River. Some of these projects here have multiple miles of fetch, open water fetch, and what you're seeing is a common existing condition here in the top left. You're seeing the bluff, a steep bluff coming into the shoreline, and it's eroding at a rate. And now what they've done is they've been able to do these systems here, which again, I'll defer to our coastal engineer, but this is a headland breakwater system where they've actually been able to place like a rocks breakwater offshore. And it's been calculated. There's a certain proportion and ratio of how to size these systems, but essentially the rocks act as essentially a breakwater or a barrier to reduce wave energy, and the resulting wave energy then dissipates in these cuspate beaches there, and it allows for a planted edge there where plantings wouldn't be able to survive or take the wave energy. And you have this stabilization here. So one thing to note about this project too is this project survived the storm of record, which is Hurricane Isabel, which had about a storm surge of about, at this site, from what I recall, from what I was told, about plus 12 feet over the area, and they had no shoreline loss. Again, this is a ground shot of what you're seeing here. This is that cuspate beach there. You're seeing the planted backshore. And then this is a photo of the breakwater here with the headland coming into it. Here's another project on the York River. That tree right there can serve as a reference point when you look at the shoreline loss and then the mitigation here. This is a natural shoreline, same thing, a headland breakwater system there with the breakwaters and a planted backshore. Another project here. This is the same project you're seeing. And the studies are out there that a planted backshore or that these resilient landscapes do allow for attenuation of some wave energy. They're not going to stop, coastal flooding, a coastal flood event, but they'll at least stabilize the sediments and as the landscape and the plantings grow and create that root mat. Another project here we have, and these are all in the Chesapeake Bay area. This is right after construction. And here is a pre, during, and after. And again, we have another one here. And here's that same project that is planted years later. So these projects have been able to stabilize shorelines, have been able to sustain storms, and they're a resilient solution to a growing problem that we're getting through climate change, through shoreline recession, sea level rise. These projects do. One thing that's good to know about these natural nature-based features, as sea level rises, their level and the water levels rise, sediments get deposited into that marsh area, and it actually allows it to grow. So you can actually add rocks as you go along, and consider them almost modular in a sense. You can add elevation to them. And then we even did some projects for VIMS Boat Basin, which is on their campus at Gloucester, Virginia. So this is right during construction. Immediately, those sand areas, those triangular sand areas that kind of come off the land and head towards those breakwaters, those are all planted. And we'll show you a recent photo. Again, these are so you see the planted backshore. It's been stabilized. And then we're getting closer to home here. There's a precedent project for breakwaters in a sense. If you've heard of the Living Breakwaters project, it was a national design competition that was sponsored or funded by GOSER at the point. Now it's Housing Communities Renewal on the south shore of Staten Island. They've installed these breakwaters that are way off site. They're about 800 feet off site. Again, the purpose of that is to reduce the wave energy coming on shore and stopping that wave attack and that coastal erosion. And then we have a project on Long Island here that VHB designed, permitted, and we're currently monitoring. It's the Village of Patchogue Shorefront Park. There was a bulkhead where that alignment is of the rock sills there, and we converted it to a natural nature-based feature. That is a photo of the marsh 1 year after planting, so that has taken off and has done very well. And we are currently monitoring it, and it has a performance rate of 97% vegetation stabilization. And then I'm going to turn over to Michael. He's online, so he should be able to present on the actual site-specific projects.
He's got to raise his hand so that they can let him in.
Michael, if you're online, if you can just raise your hand on the Zoom. Are you seeing it, James?
I don't have control over that.
Okay.
The eye in the sky does.
Okay.
Is there anyone online? Kevin? You there?
I have him on Zoom.
Michael, you there?
You have no one on Zoom, you said?
They're joining right now.
Okay.
Hello?
Yeah. There you go.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Yep.
All right, go ahead. Well, actually, I'm trying to see the screen.
I can forward for you, Michael. So.
Yeah, that's perfect right there. All right, so our first steps when we get a project like this is we go and we collect wind, water levels, all the data before we do any layout, any design. We want to know what's going on in the area. So we collected winds from around to try to figure out the daily wave, wind, current, those conditions. And then we collect extreme conditions, extreme winds, and we use ACES, Automatic Coastal Engineering System, to project the storm waves that they may see in the worst possible fetch so that we can lay out and design the structures. So when we did that, we also are limited by our the project limits of the bid. And so what we did was we looked at the wavelength typical for our layout, and that determines how big the structures are going to be and the gap openings. And then we look at the extreme waves to determine how big the rock structures need to be and how high they should be in the water, above high water line and such. And then, then we look back at the backshore. We know from extensive research that the gaps between the breakwaters, how they're going to react with certain grain sizes, and that's how we set them offshore. So if if you got a bigger grain saying you're looking at a 1/10 slope, so then when we design the cusp and the backshore beach, we know that we have to go from low water 1/10 all the way up, and all the way up to 4 or 5, whatever the beach is going to be, and that is based on like your 25, your 100-year storm. So that's how everything got to where it is, because your wind fields are bimodal. You got a lot coming from both directions. Mostly things are kind of moving west to east, but there is a component that moves east to west some. So that's how that layout got. The next slide just kind of shows you a breakdown of your wind field. This is the typical daily, yearly average for 70, 72. And then when we do the extremes, we take an omnidirectional wind. So it's typically a larger wave than what you're going to see there, but you're looking at anywhere from a 2-foot wave to a 4-foot wave, normally and in a storm. The next, it just kind of shows you the profiles. One profile is behind the structure and one profile is in the gap. And you see the 1/10, and then it comes up and there's a break area for a berm. And then it goes back up to about +7. That's because your 100-year storm is right around, I think it's 7 or 8. So basically when the storms come in, the waves will break on the beach and not make it to the houses, per se, is what we're looking for. We're trying to stop anything from continuing on past the beach. And then the structures are set kind of, they're a little bit lower, and that's due to allow waves to break over the structures and move some of the sand to continue some sand transport to diminish end effects of the structures. And you see the planting there as shown.
All right, thank you, Michael. So one of the things that we want to discuss, or at least understand for this project is, we're calling back to that breach that happened in 1993. So we have a few vulnerabilities that we understand from just looking at this project. Is we have critical infrastructure on Dune Road. We have the utilities there. We have electrical. We have water, and then we also have, if you've reviewed the Suffolk County Coastal Resiliency Plan that just was issued July of last year, I believe, it was July of last year. It highlighted top 10 projects in Suffolk County that were vulnerable, that needed some type of addressing due to coastal resiliency, and one of them being the Cupsock Beach, one Cupsock Beach, and then second Cupsock Beach or Bayside marshland area. So really understanding that, yes, we are addressing that there is coastal erosion on the Bayside, but really we want to, this is a pilot project that we're trying to implement, and we found a vulnerable area due to our studies, and we understand that there's more studies to do throughout West Hampton Dunes and throughout the isthmus of all of West Hampton, of that Dune Road. There's critical infrastructure there that is at stake, that if we don't address anything at this current time, that we're going to continue to see shoreline recession, and we just want to prevent another breach from happening to the extent possible through engineering studies and science. So again, this is a pilot project that we think that could be applicable to not just this site-specific area, but other areas in the village and throughout Long Island, to tell you the truth. And then I'm going to just pass this over to David Kennedy to just discuss permitting.
I'm David Kennedy. I'm an ecologist and wetland scientist, and senior environmental scientist for VHB. As far as permitting for the project goes, I think the trustees are probably familiar with the permits that would be required for the project. So
you're missing us, though.
I'm sorry?
You're missing the trustees in that list. We're not the town of Southampton.
Town trustees, my mistake. So permits will be required from the Army Corps and the DEC, and also consistency review with New York State coastal policies, with New York State Department of State, and permitting with the town trustees. So far, we've had pre-application meetings with the DEC, and then we had a second one with the Army Corps and the Department of State, and of course today we're presenting to the trustees. So the next steps would be the preparation of the permit application packages. That'll happen concurrently with the design and engineering of the project that Michael will be working on. And that'll include impact analyses and also alternative analyses that we believe will demonstrate that the project that we're proposing is better than is the solution for the issues along the shoreline within the Village Improvement District, and why it's better than some of the individual homeowner shoreline stabilization efforts that have taken place in the past that Carlos showed pictures of earlier. And also we're aware of the shoreline stabilization project that happened at properties to the east of the Village Improvement District. And I don't want to say that project failed, but I guess it's safe to say it hasn't lived up to expectations. So we'll have alternative analyses that demonstrate why this project will represent a better solution than those other projects did. One of the things I wanted to bring up is that the DEC, as part of our permit application with them, requires an authorization letter by all property owners to be submitted with the permit application. And so that includes the individual homeowners within the Village Improvement District, as well as the town trustees, since they own the underwater lands.
I just want to be clear that the authorization letter authorizes us to, the Village Improvement District, to request a permit from the DEC and allows VHB, which is us, to file the permit application with the DEC. It's not in any way an approval or an authorization from the trustees for the project. It's simply that authorization letter. And the letter, this is a draft of it. It would look like this. You can see it's just one sentence. It's straight and to the point. It describes what I just said, and we understand that there might be some trepidation from the trustees about the letter, so we also understand that the trustees council may want to review the letter and perhaps modify it with language that makes it more comfortable for them. We're fine with that as long as the gist of the letter remains the same as an authorization for us to proceed with the permit application to the DEC.
Thank you for clarifying and recognizing that.
Absolutely. Is there any questions about the letter, or?
I can't read it, so
Oh, okay.
I'll take your word for it until I see it. So.
I apologize for that.
Yeah, you'll get us copies of all the paper,
Yeah.
necessary paper. Obviously, you'll have, so that we can, right, handle it
Yeah,
appropriately on our end. And then we'll, as you get into the heart of the project, you'll be back in front of us about, the meat and potatoes of the project itself.
Exactly.
Needing a permit from this board.
And is there any way we could have a hard copy of the PowerPoint presentation for each of the trustees? Thank you.
Council.
Council, of course.
All right, I think Carlos has one more slide.
Great, thank you, David. And the next thing is we'll need another letter of support for, all right, so the Village Improvement District and the Village of West Hampton Dunes is looking to pursue a grant for, under the New York State Department of State Coastal Rehabilitations and Resilience Grant that's due June 6th. And really what it says is highlighted there, that they need, property records, and they need essentially a letter stating that if where the work is going to be conducted is not on the applicant's property, that we just need authorization to pursue that grant application. So contingent upon approval, successful approval. So we can word it in any way. That is, again, like David mentioned. So it's just a letter to show that, that we have authorization from the property owner of the underwater lands.
So do we have to pass a resolution for me to sign a letter of such?
We would need to, yeah.
So he needs this by June 6th, so.
Before your next meeting.
June 2nd will be the next meeting.
Right, so we could, get the paperwork, and then we could review it, and get the legalese back and forth, and then we could meet that deadline.
Okay. So that was the project next steps, is we just need those written letters, please, if we could, for proceeding with the project. And then after that, once, again, contingent upon it, we get successful grant funding, and we'll pursue permitting, design engineering plans, and then, if everything goes well, bidding and construction. So I'll conclude with that. Any questions?
Yeah, you did the project there in Patchogue Village?
Yes, we did.
Can I get a set of paperwork involving that?
Sure.
Seeing it?
Would you like anything specific? I mean, we can give you.
Well, my question comes, with the ownership, again, of the underwater lands versus the upland owners.
Okay. Yeah, so that one, we were mostly on land. We didn't have to worry about underwater lands. We didn't have to go to town of Brookhaven for that. And actually, believe it or not, I think the village owns a certain distance from mean high water out, specifically in front of Shorefront Park.
That's not the case here, though. That's why I'm asking.
Okay, yes, definitely, yeah.
Because there's a question of accretion and avulsion that has to come into play here.
Okay, I can.
Yeah, I think it's, we could put something together legally that works.
Yeah.
We're not changing any boundary lines. I mean,
Yes.
we certainly want to resolve the issue of erosion and have a good project. We just don't want any boundary lines
We
changing.
just want to
so.
keep the recognition of the trustees as property owner.
Correct.
I also like the progressiveness of the project rather than just putting, hardened structure down to think you're actually going to protect the seaside. Like, to be able to actually increase wetlands and, as we've mentioned before, like spawning habitat for horseshoe crabs, and the list can go right on down the line with the project as such. So the more information on something like this, the better.
Oh, correct. Yeah, there's. Sorry.
With you forthcoming with a project like this, we can virtually see that there is no wetlands currently there. It's just sand, and it's badly eroded, more so over the last couple of years. And to be able to do a project and see the gradual build of wetlands is something that's a wonderful thing, because it's all habitat, and you have to take in consideration it's a prime area for horseshoe crab spawning up there.
Right.
There's a lot more than meets the eye when you first do a glance at it. So
Right.
I'm kind of excited because we worked with another consultant on another project, and it's been like 3+ years, and it's starting to come around, but it's been very minimal.
Mhm.
And when we approved it, I said it's going to take 4 or 5 years before we can really, look at it and say whether it's a success or not.
Well,
We're not there yet.
And I think there's going to be evolution in design. You
Yes.
learn as you go. The science then shows, okay, we got to tweak this or tweak that, and to get a better result. And I think that's what's going to happen here. But I think step one should be relatively easy, and just provide what we need on the legal side of it,
Sure.
and then we can get that resolution passed on the second to get you to where you need to be to go to the next step, and then you'll be back before the board to work on the actual project.
Yep, no, I totally agree, and actually I didn't get into the benefits. I mean, this that project at Padua was a net benefit project. I mean, there's ecological, social, economic benefits. For a village doesn't have to keep maintaining a bulkhead. That they haven't really have to maintain anything really. Maybe if pulling out a few phragmites here and there, but if they do colonize, but we've seen there was. There's a tidal creek that you're seeing that wraps around, that Roxdale wraps around, but I mean they haven't seen blue crab in there at all. And then the first year we saw blue crab and American eel going in there. So there definitely is a benefit to these projects, and there's lots of co-benefits with the public and public waterfront access and everything. So
And we as a trustee board are interested in all that stuff. So the more you can provide for us outside of this, the better,
Sure.
because there are going to be interested parties in possibly doing this in other parts of the town. So.
Understood.
One thing I noticed on the Kings Hill overview, overhead, there's on the ends of the project, there's a rock revetment along the shoreline, and I didn't see something like similar to that in this area in West Hampton.
So we've had a previous comment or concept with that. We had spurs on the end, and it really depends on the modeling or like the analysis. So if that's a common question that we get is like, how do you treat the end conditions when you have a project limit? Because really, I mean, you really should, in a sense, based on site conditions, you should really continue the mitigation until your existing conditions tell you not to, or you don't need to, or you can go back to a marsh approach or something soft.
Yes. Overall, we would love to extend it all the way to that existing bulkhead that's down there and tie in towards the spit that's there, but that's not practical. It's not necessarily feasible right now, cost permitting wise. So we marginalize it to an area. Those ones you saw in Kings Mill, those were already typical kind of headland structures. And what they did was to really hold a beach there, they put those structures in to really just kind of get everything nice so they could add more planing.
And also, where's your time frame in terms of after permitting, and where's your time frame for completion or even construction?
So, I mean, really, it's based on permitting. I guess when we get our permits. So
once you get all the permits, where's your time from start to finish in terms of like?
once we would. I would assume the village would want to build this, bid this out as soon as they get their, as soon as the construction drawings are done after permitting. So we probably would have our permit plans would probably be at 60%, I would say. And then once we get the permits, we'll finish up at 100% or 90, 100%, and go out to bid after that. So we could expect it a few months after.
But you need the money.
Yeah, I thought you were looking for.
The money. Yeah, the money's going to be.
You gotta have the money.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
Yes.
that's the key. I mean, you can have permits and plans and all this jazz. You want to get them to the deadlines so that they can make their grant approach, hopefully be successful,
Yeah.
and get the funds to be, right?
Correct. Yes. I mean, the funding would not be accessible until next fiscal year, so 2026 at earliest. And then, but we wouldn't probably be permitted until, I would have to assume about a year to year and a half for permitting.
Yeah, but our next step is just as we outlined.
Yep.
resolution on the 2nd, get you your letter before the 6th, and you can keep moving forward.
Correct, yes.
Can I just ask one last question? Just looking at these, and this is a very good, it seems like you put the hardened revetment out front. The sand that is utilized to make basically the use, like where is that source? Is that from an outside source? Does that naturally occur?
No, it is. So with any typical coastal structure, whenever you do those, you want to go ahead and do a fill. So we would locate a sand mine, and we typically would like to find a little heavier grain sand, and then we would place that initially, and then it'll work itself there. And some may accumulate because it's shallow out in front, but it would be a fill.
You're gonna have to build that into the cost, because I don't think sand mines are allowed much on Long Island anymore. Serious.
Yes.
It's expensive to get stuff on and off Long Island. So, I mean, that's why I was, is this going to be dredge spoil from offshore? Is this going to, there's a lot of question marks we have going on here.
Exexactly. And those more will be, as of now, we're planning on it being an upland fill trucked. We've looked at cost, and that's another inhibit. But we also will, once we kind of go through this process, the structures may change. There may be a little bit of, so that we can get costs down kind of deals. Then we'll go into some engineering judgment and some value engineering things to help.
You might want to look into if there are any future intercoastal dredging projects slated with the county or the Army Corps that you could utilize for this material. I'm not a fan of borrowing anything more from the ocean than we need, because it just makes big holes out there and void of life. But I mean, this is a unique opportunity that you may be able to partner with the county on one of their dredge projects, like the town did in Tiana, and also in Road H in Hampton Bays.
Right.
Yeah, and you got Finn, maybe. All
right, so we're
sand.
The mayor would like to speak. No, you got to come up here. Though. You can speak, but you can, yeah.
Hi, I'm Erwin Krasnow. I'm the mayor of West Hampton Dunes. I'm actually the second mayor of West Hampton Dunes. And I spent my whole career working collaboratively with government agencies and the private sector. And I think this is a project that we're looking forward to working collaboratively with the trustees, with the Army Corps, with the DEC, to do everything the right way going forward. I understand what you need legally, which we have a great team of lawyers that will work with you, not against you.
And a history with West Hampton Dunes.
I understand that, and I really appreciate the fact that, yes, that I'm new here, and you guys are welcoming me with open arms to not talk about the past, but move forward in the future. And, again, as I spoke to the mayor of Quogue and I spoke to the mayor of West Hampton Beach, and I asked them how they're resolving these problems, they have bulkheading. So they resolved it all with bulkheading. We're not looking to bulkhead West Hampton Dunes. We're looking to find projects that will help stabilize the shoreline. This is kind of what we call a test project. Hopefully this will be work which then could possibly be brought into other parts of West Hampton Dunes, and again, other parts of West Hampton, other parts of Southampton. And, there's a lot of coastline issues that people are working with. So we're going to be kind of the guinea pigs. And part of this is hopefully going to be provided the money from grants. Also, the people in the VID are willing to put up a substantial amount of money to work on this project, because when you lose 50 feet of your backyard, you don't really have a backyard anymore. So we're looking to do that. And also something else you just mentioned, I already reached out to Catherine Stark about 4 weeks ago, before I even spoke to the trustees, about working on possibly getting beneficial dredging materials from what the county is doing locally sourced, as long as it's, quality and clean type things to possibly use towards projects in West Hampton Dunes. And they're working on trying to see how they can help us with that. The county just helped us with something out by Cupsog, and the Army Corps of Engineers just basically built a whole beautiful beach on the bay side of Cupsog. So it went from cliffs to now there's a nice beach there, which actually could possibly change a little bit of the topography and how the sand moves in West Hampton Dunes. But all in all, I really just wanted to say thank you for allowing the opportunity to speak. I appreciate us being here. We're looking forward to working with you collaboratively on this and hopefully other projects in the future, and I thank you.
Well, our missions are aligned because this board endeavors to collaborate for the greater good. And I appreciate the relationship we've formed. And I think there's a lot of good things we can do together moving forward.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you to the rest of the board.
Thank you.
Okay. We're all good? I think this discussion, again, this is a discussion. I think we're good enough to get a resolution, get the lawyers talking and get a resolution so that we can give them a letter to go to the next step, right?
Yeah.
And then we'll work on the project after that. Any feedback? Hear feedback? All right, I'm going to move right along while these folks are talking over here. Let's go to the public hearings. The next public hearing that I would like to open is actually number 1, Oksana Lashko, 12 Bayview Drive, East Noyak. So I'd like to make a motion to open that public hearing.
Second.
Seconded by trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so,
Can I just say one thing? When you go up there, there is a sign-in sheet. Please sign in before you do anything, okay? I just noticed, I don't think the previous people did.
okay. You want to provide a genesis, Joe, or you just want to let him start?
I'm sorry?
You want to provide a genesis for this public hearing, or do you want to?
Well, the genesis of the public hearing is there's a permit application pending before the board to basically legalize some structures that were erected without benefit of a trustee permit. The matter is in justice court, is my understanding. And there are some questions and some reach outs by the neighbors regarding the proposed project and permit.
That is correct. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is James Valhadamas. I am the attorney for Oksana Lashko and the owner of 12 Bayview Drive East. I am handling the town code violations, and I'm also involved in the litigation with the neighbors. I engaged Mr. Ernie Spellman as my dock professional to handle any issues with this dock. So we have Ernie here today that can answer any questions regarding the application itself. So we're just here to answer any questions of the board, and obviously knowing that we have some neighbors who are unhappy with the application, we're here to address those concerns as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there anybody from the public that wants to speak on this? Okay.
Counsel, you may want to sit over here. If you're going to be responding, we need to get you on the record as well.
Happy to do so.
I think you may have taken the sign-in sheet with your papers.
No, the gentleman has it.
Okay, perfect. Good afternoon, members of the Board of Trustees of the Freeholders and Commonalty. My name is Martha Reichert. I'm an attorney at Toomey Latham Shea, Kelly Dubin, and Cororaro, 33 West 2nd Street, Riverhead, New York. I represent the adjoining neighbors, Mary Anello and James Sieber, Carlene and Louis Galasso, on the other side on Redwood Road. This is an unusual matter in terms of what has happened here. What the board has before them right now is a dock application to legalize an unpermitted reconstruction and as-built dock, but also the application seeks to sort of reconfigure a little bit to address some needs of the property owner to bring in, I believe, a purported 35-foot boat. We put in a detailed written submission dated February 25th, 2025, reviewing that particular application, which to the best of my knowledge has not been revised. I won't go into every single aspect of my letter, but suffice to say, a permit was needed to rebuild the dock. One was not obtained. The rebuilt dock is non-compliant with Blue Book standards on virtually all accounts, from dimensional requirements, width, add-ons, cantilevered support beams that serve as kayak racks. The list goes on within the book. The application is also deficient in the sense that it does not meet the minimum standards in terms of the survey. It shows two different things in one of the plans versus the survey. It's still not Blue Book compliant. It's asking this board to do something that it doesn't regularly do. It seeks to have 2 floats. There are no soundings provided to justify this sort of requirement. It seeks to add dolphin pilings on both sides of the dock in a way that would infringe upon the requirement that all aspects of a marine dependent structure, including the pilings, meet the 10-foot setback from the extended property lines over the water. And that's just the dock. I think that one of the first and foremost things that happened with this property as well is that the property owner went and completely wiped out the intertidal marsh, cleared the entire marsh grass, and that was back in October 2023, shortly after the applicant purchased the property. That remains an unaddressed violation. One of the things that's going on in Justice Court, of course, is that the violations were written up as violations of Chapter 325, which is the town wetlands law. No application has been submitted as of this date. Perhaps Mr. Valhadamas can clarify on that. Same thing, there were structures, again, that I would say are not usually part of this board's purview, but under the 1996 zoning board decision, the trustees imposed 3 different conditions at the request of the planning board. And so the trustees actually have an ongoing jurisdictional aspect, even with things that are landward of mean high water, because of that zoning board resolution from the 90s, which again was pursuant to trustee requirements and conditions that the zoning board implied, and so the trustees had oversight of. So we have environmental destruction and degradation, and we have an illegal and non-compliant dock and an application before this board that would not correct any of those infirmities. It would actually negatively impact the Anello Seaber property to the west, because those pilings would be put directly on the extended property line out into the water. And what we have, and our major concern is that while this has been in Justice Court for well over a year now, it has not resulted in any meaningful applications to correct and address these environmental issues. Now, an application was made to this board, but it's a half-hearted application at best, given all of its deficiencies, from the survey to a non-compliant dock application to the fact that the applicant failed to show for 2 different work sessions. So I appreciate that the trustees scheduled this public hearing, because the neighbors do want an opportunity to speak, and normally we wouldn't have that opportunity until the application was deemed complete and there was an opportunity for the public to comment. So again, thank you for this. So we've discussed that it's non-compliant, the application is incomplete. Another thing that, again, because the survey is not accurate, it does not show a riprap wall that was constructed, and I don't know where that falls on the mean high water line, but it is a shore hardening. In our submission in February, we put into the record the transcript from an order to show cause hearing that we held, in which Sean Cambridge told the court, based I guess on representations at Justice Court, that they would be seeking a bulkhead application because that would enable them to get different jurisdiction from the Conservation Board pursuant to Chapter 325. Under Chapter 325, that's commonly known as the bulkhead exception. That only applies if you have 100 linear feet of pre-existing bulkhead. I think it has to pre-exist prior to the enactment of Chapter 325. It has to be functional, et cetera. I mean, this property only has a shoreline of 50 feet. So that wouldn't even come into play here, but it doesn't change the fact that there has been a destruction of the intertidal marsh. There's been a shore hardening in addition to this illegal dock. And it's all, again, to the detriment of the environment, to the trustees' tidal waters and underwater bottomlands. It will exacerbate erosion. And frankly, what we would really like to see is a compliant dock with an appropriately sized boat, but we want to see a restoration of the marshland. And because the fact that there are different agencies. There's also a DEC enforcement proceeding against the property owner for the destruction of the intertidal marsh. We believe there needs to be coordinated review, and it needs to be swift, because again, what has happened here is the applicant can play boards one off the other. They can continue to keep getting adjournments. In fact, their last adjournment, or their last appearance in Justice Court in April, the judge told Mr. Vlahadamas that he wanted to see applications submitted to the town, meaning the zoning board and the conservation board, within 30 days. 30 days has passed, and at this point, again, based on my review of what's logged into GIS, no applications have been made. And this is a cat and mouse game, where they're just going to continue to use a non-compliant dock using treated materials, which I know we've had a discussion on earlier today. The destruction of the marshland hasn't been addressed. The clearing of a 40-foot wide, mature, covenanted wetlands, non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer, completely cleared and wiped out with emerald green lawn down to the water. This can't fall through the cracks. You know, I think that people start to see someone clearing out the marshland and they go, oh, hey, why don't I create my own personal beach? So what we request this board is not only to take a very hard look at this application and ensure that it doesn't approve something that's not Blue Book compliant. I mean, this isn't like minimal non-compliance with Blue Book. This is literally every single aspect of dock construction under the Blue Book is violated by this existing dock and the proposed reconfiguration. Is to make sure that this doesn't become the textbook example of how you buy time, fail to come into compliance, shirk the laws, while the neighbors have to deal with the fact that there's a non-compliant dock, that their property stands to be eroded because of the destruction of the intertidal marsh, and really bring this to heel, because this is not the sort of thing that we should be allowing to happen in Southampton, where there again is no meaningful attempt to correct the issues that have been brought by the applicant, which were completely created by them because they chose to clear out the marsh. They chose to rebuild without permits. And again, 2 work sessions, no appearances. So I am joined here today by my clients. And if the board has any questions for them, otherwise I would like, our submission to stand in the record as well as my comments.
I have a question.
Yes.
Did I read it correctly? You said that there were structures that were built without benefit of a building permit from land management?
Correct. So there are multiple accessory structures that were built on the seaward side of the house, which, as you know, is discouraged under Chapter 225. It would have required a wetlands permit. This entire property is small, it's constrained, so everything is in jurisdiction of Chapter 325, which is the town's wetlands permitting law. What we believe is a home office was built on the easterly seaward side, only 2 feet from the property line, which is a violation of the side yard setbacks. The deck was expanded seaward, and a sauna was constructed under the deck, which really makes it part of the primary structure. Also no permits. There's a stop work order in place, but not really being enforced in the sense that, these are as-built structures, and upon information and belief, they are being used, which is really a violation of the stop work order under the town code, under the building chapter. And again, my clients have commenced a taxpayer action against the town of Southampton. And because we feel the town has failed to do everything it can to address public health and safety issues that come from unpermitted and unregulated building, the environmental issues that come from doing that, the clearing out of a mature 40-foot wide vegetated non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer, the clearing of the intertidal marsh, and the construction of a dock using treated materials in a non-conforming location in a narrow portion of the creek. Not to mention there's lighting and all these other things that generally the trustees try to limit to only that which furthers navigational safety.
Is the structure occupied?
Well, it's not.
To the best of your knowledge or your client's
To the
knowledge?
best of my knowledge, it's being used.
Okay, is there anything more?
I will let Mr. Vlahadamas address our comments or any questions the board has.
Well, I have one comment. how are we holding a public hearing on an incomplete application? We don't even have anything to review that it would be possibly approved right now. I looked at, real quick at the application, the doc was, I don't think is approvable. I can't say that but I would love to have everything in front of us so that we could sit here and actually have a true public hearing and get, testimony from you and your neighbors and your client, and that we can do a proper review over it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would love a complete application as well. And I think that goes back to the fact that from the first work session that was held on this, the trustees discussed all of these deficiencies, wanted to see revised plans, and nothing's been submitted. That was, you've had the application pending. It's been on 2 different work sessions, and at both times, the applicant and their agents failed to appear to address the board's comments and provide those revised plans.
And I do know through the hearing processes that we have on previous applications that the Army Corps of Engineers, I believe, would like a 15-foot setback, not a 10-foot like us and the DEC would like. So you have to take all of this into consideration and resubmit of the application.
Yes. I mean, listen, this is the sort of thing where if the applicant were to put in the proper application materials so it could be deemed complete, you could always adjourn this public hearing and then reconvene it or schedule a different one. The controversy isn't going away, but neither are the violations. They're not being addressed, and that is to the detriment of everyone in the town of Southampton. This is an important waterway, and it's almost like that broken window theory. The longer this goes unaddressed, the more people start to think, why can't I clear out the marsh and have my own beach?
All right, well, let's see if we can get some of this addressed and get what's in the bailiwick of the trustees' wheelhouse cleaned up, okay? Do you want to address some of this, or does somebody else from the public want to speak before I allow him the opportunity to? Hold on. No.
Oh, I wanted to put into the record and give it to James. These are just copies of the last Justice Court transcript in which Justice Weber said he wanted an application submitted within 30 days of April 9th.
It's a public hearing. Address the board. Okay. Okay, so state your name for the record. I'm going to give you your opportunity to address.
Hi, my name is Mary Anello Sieber. I'm the neighbor who lives directly to the west of their property on 10 Bayview Drive East. I've been a lifelong person coming out to Sag Harbor. I love Sag Harbor. I've been coming here for 50 years. We have a family house out here, and in 2015, my husband and I bought our house next door to Lasco and Medina. And in 2020, we bought a house, 0.17 of an acre. Lasco Medina property is 0.17 of an acre, so I think we're the smallest property in all of Bay Point. We bought a property with a permit in place for a dock, which we had constructed according to all the rules and regulations of the town of Southampton. We built a house according to all the rules and regulations in the town of Southampton. We have a 50-foot wide buffer that we had to install per Marty Shea. I love Sag Harbor. I love that this area has rules and regulations because that's what keeps it beautiful. We have a dock that is, the Lasco Medina dock is about 5 feet from our dock on the going out towards the water. So if they dock a boat on their side of the dock, it's going to impinge my husband's ability to dock our boat. This is an old picture, first of all. That's not even a new picture. But if you look at the channel where our house is, Lasco Medina's house is in the most narrow part of the channel between upper and lower Sag Harbor Cove. The currents that go through that channel are the narrowest part, it's the biggest current. So my husband has a very difficult time, as it is, to dock the boat. So if they were to put a boat here, it would impinge my husband's ability to dock our boat. I just want to say that for the record.
How big is that boat?
Our boat's 33 feet. We have a dock that's constructed right in the middle of our property, and I even have a video of the boats that come by. If a boat came by and they proposed to have their dock with another floating dock, the boats wouldn't even be able to go. They would hit their boat. It's the narrowest part of the channel. If you look at I have an aerial view, I have videos of boats going by, it would hit their boat. It's a safety concern. I just want to say that for the
Okay.
record.
Okay, thank you.
you.
Is there anybody else that wants to address the board before I let Mr. Valadamas? I see he's feverishly taking notes, and I know you have something to say. I'm going to give you a good opportunity, okay? Nobody else, my understanding, there's nobody else that wants to speak relative to this public hearing? Anybody on the Zoom that wants to speak relative to this public hearing? If you could put your hand up.
No one on Zoom.
Okay. So she's ready. I'll let her have the floor.
No, I'm sorry, I'm just filling out.
I was going to have him maybe go back to the, you staying there, or I was going to have him address the
I will
board.
clear the podium for
Yeah,
Mr.
I was going to let him address the board appropriately and give him the floor. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Members of the board, I just need to address and so everybody can understand why we're here. Ms. Reichert is looking for a forum, and she's going anywhere she can go. She went to, and her clients, they went to the Supreme Court of the State of New York. Judge Modeleski summarily denied their applications. They're seeking all types of injunctions against my client. They went so far as to ask the court, the Supreme Court, to have my clients physically removed from their property. It was summarily denied. So Ms. Reichert and her clients are looking for a forum for somebody to listen because the Supreme Court's not listening. The Southampton Justice Court is not listening to them. So here they are trying to present some falsities to the boards in order to get what is an agenda. And I'm happy that Ms. Anello was able to come up and explain to the board, they just don't want my client to have the dock. They don't want my client to have a boat there. They have a boat there. They have a dock. They don't want my client to have it there. So they want to enjoy the waterways the way they want to enjoy the waterways, and they don't want my clients to do the same. My clients hired Mr. Spellman to come in to fix the issues with this dock. There is a dock permit there. It's been alleged both here and in the Southampton Justice Court that my client has no dock permit. My client purchased the property with an existing permit for the dock, both from the trustees and the DEC. It's my understanding that the DEC permit is from 1995 and the trustees permit is from 1998. And we engaged Mr. Spellman to review and make the application to the board with respect to the legalization of the dock. It wasn't to legalize an illegal dock. Admittedly, my clients who were not aware of the rules and regulations out here, they redid the wood in the dock without understanding that there were restrictions, limitations on that. So the reason why we're here is to address my client redoing the dock without a permit. And then Mr. Spellman has in his review of this matter, has realized that the dock may actually be in an improper place. Not that my client put it there, because my client only purchased the property 2 years ago, but at least dating back to the late 90s, there seems to be an issue with the way the dock was constructed versus the permits that were obtained in 1995 and 1998. So we do want to address the location of the dock, any violations of the Blue Book rules with respect to the current aspect of the dock. Mr. Spellman is addressing with the new proposed revision to the dock that would both allow Blue Book compliance and allow my client to use it for a boat. So again, for the neighbors to come and say that my client and where their property is a narrow place where it would be unsafe for a boat to go, I mean, I have a picture of the neighbor's dock. I'm happy to submit to the board if the board wants to look at it, but it's pretty clear. Like there's the neighbor's dock and the neighbor's boat, right? So there's the 33-foot Grady White. There's my client's dock. So why is it that the neighbors can enjoy the benefit of a dock with a boat on it, but then they can come up here and tell the board that it would be unsafe for my client to have a dock at the property that's right next to them, because they're saying that we're at the narrowest point, where I would make the same argument for the
So
neighbors.
since you brought up that picture and you made the statement that you don't think it's in the right spot, is the dock supposed to be farther away from the property line on the prior 1995 and 1998 approvals that were granted by this board and the other regulatory authorities?
We don't know, because and again, you know, what Mr. Spellman and I have found is that the prior permits, so they just indicate, it says 12 Bayview Drive East, Sag Harbor, list of the Suffolk County tax map number, and it says to construct a 4x6 stairway, it looks like 38 catwalk, 8-inch diameter piles, 4x12 ramp, and 6x16 floating dock secured by 2 8-inch diameter piles. And then this is 1998, and we have the DEC approval from 1995 that says a 4-foot by 18-foot timber dock in accordance with plans stamped and approved March 27th, 1995.
So we need that.
I'm sorry?
We would need that to see where they cited that dock specifically, right?
Yes. So
I'd also like to mention that the original structure has been added onto while this was under ownership. So the landward end of this structure has an increased footprint than what was originally permitted, which is attached to the dock that the trustees approved. So, I mean, there has been changes, then amendments to this dock, whether the guy knew it or not, we knew whether he was supposed to do it or not. In order for us to approve any structure, it's got to get, first we have to FOIL and make sure that we have as much information of the original permit, and then the intended changes. And unfortunately, we did have 2 work sessions scheduled and no one showed up, that we tried to actually talk through this project. So now we're in a public forum when people are paying for lawyers and all that such. But I do like the location, the new proposed location. It's more centralized on the piece of property. And it's also utilizing the original catwalk that is there, but that catwalk has been added onto, and that's an illegal structure, you know, according to the trustees. And then as far as the floats, like, I think it's very obvious that the Blue Book compliance is 1 6x20-foot float. That's what we agreed to, and so I don't believe we're going to get much traction with 2 floats.
Mr. Vlamatis, just to clarify, are you telling me that the Supreme Court dismissed the case, or is the taxpayer action still pending?
taxpayer action is still pending.
Okay, so the only thing that was denied was a TRO, preliminary injunction application, correct?
Correct, but then we adjourned.
No. So what you're telling the people is, you made it suggest the Supreme Court has just basically shooed them out of court. The matter is still very much alive, correct?
Pending certain motions.
Pending, but also the fact that it's addressing a lot of the issues under Chapter 325, under Chapter 330 of the Town Code as well as potentially, if we were to get involved in this, we would be in court trying to enforce the Blue Book if we don't get compliance voluntarily, correct?
You would, but if I can address your questions correctly. So by agreement by all parties, the answers were adjourned, the motion return dates were adjourned. So I'll stand corrected if I don't mean to infer to the court, to the trustees that the Supreme Court matter was dismissed. But what was dismissed was what was rejected initially was their temporary restraining order that was requested at the outset of the matter upon filing by Judge Modeleski. And so that's a big step.
Was the preliminary injunction motion ever decided yet, or is there one pending?
Has been adjourned along with the answer.
Okay, so it's pending. It hasn't been dismissed. All right, thank you. I
Correct.
just wanted a clarification
Has
here for
not
the
been
record.
dismissed. That is correct.
Well, regardless of what the courts are going to do, we're going to work on getting these projects into compliance with our Blue Book rules and regulations properly permitted, right? Which is going to require us to get a lot of information and be working towards that from our aspect. I mean, the lawyers and the courts are going to handle their piece and.
Yeah, not obstructing navigable waters. You know?
And Mr. Horowitz and the members of the board, that's exactly what we want to focus on. I understand that the neighbors and Ms. Reichert want to address things that are outside the jurisdiction of this particular board. We will address them as we are in the Justice Court, as we are in the Supreme Court, as we will with the Wetlands Department, as we will with the Building Department. You know, again, Ms. Reichert's request is that there be some type of consolidation of all these, and where we have different boards, you know, working in conjunction with each other because of what their purported belief is with respect to this property. But I just don't understand what their position is. Really simple. We're here. We have an application pending. We want this board to rule on that application. We will go to all the respective agencies and boards that we need to go to with respect to the legalization of the property. And yes, we are working with the Southampton Town Attorney's Office and Mr. Cambridge to resolve the town code matters, which we're working towards a resolution on. And, you know, we'll make all our appropriate applications. If the board has any particular questions that I'm admittedly not a doc expert or a Blue Book expert, and I have Mr. Spellman here. If there's anything in particular that the board has questions on that Mr. Spellman can answer while he's here, we're happy to address those issues.
Let me ask my environmental analyst, preliminary review, did it, application?
I have it up if you guys want to look at
Blue
it.
Book tests, or
does
was
not.
it, it's not?
No.
So we're not meeting Blue Book tests.
We would have reviewed that at the work session. Oops, sorry.
So,
Well, first and foremost, you need a bathymetric survey of the underwater lands there. And also the mean high water mark. So if there's any issues with the grasses being removed and the shoreline being altered, that we can do that and incorporate that into the application or permit, so there can be restoration on the beach grass.
Yeah, I recommend that we try and, I mean, I had an empty slate today, but I recommend that Mr. Spellman comes for a work session and we go through the processes whereby we always do it. We sit down with the marine engineer or the environmental analyst and say, this is what the trustees recommend, and the environmental analyst can then just bring it back to his client and say, this is what the trustees are going to accept. And then during this also the same period of time, there's going to have to be Army Corps and DEC permits filed. If this dock is going to change location, then all agencies involved are going to have to be notified of it and accept it.
right,
Understood.
right, so where you're at today, we don't
We're
have.
not going to do a work session.
Yeah, we don't have a plan in front of us that is compliant, so I think what we're gonna have to do is adjourn this.
I would keep it open, adjourn it, and put it on for the next available work session slot.
Yeah,
You want to
that's
revise
exactly
it
what we're gonna,
before you bring it? Okay.
which is,
So he'll let us know what work session, or do you want to have it on the next work session?
See how fast we can get it revised.
June.
Is that okay with the board?
June 2nd?
Yeah, sure.
June 2nd is our next
June
work session.
2nd would be the next, I would recommend June 2nd just to
We could put it on, and if you can't shake it out, if you want to meet with me and go over like what we think we can get close to, what the whole board would agree on. But you know, we also have to talk to council, and this thing's in court, and there's a lot of hot topics going on here.
Yeah, right.
But if you want, as far as the permit application, you know, it's got to be on work session, and it's really on you of how fast you can turn that around.
Yeah, the second should be fine.
Okay, so I'll motion to, you wanna speak still?
Yeah, I just want to make. So first and foremost, if you look at the letter that we submitted, we didn't say that Lashko can't have a dock. They need to have a dock that works for their property, that addresses the environmental violations, and works for whatever boat they want. Not every boat can fit at this site, and so once they put in their soundings and their bathymetric measurements, right, then we can see what they can work with. But it's a small lot and a small waterfront. Not everybody gets to put a 14-foot beam, catamaran at their spot, right? It has to be appropriate. Just like on Mecox, everyone has an appropriately sized boat on their docks. Same thing here. Otherwise, there are wonderful marinas where they can dock an oversized boat. Secondly, I think, again, what I would impress upon this board is the applicant can say, oh yeah, we'll get you revised plans, we'll do this, we'll do that. When, right? Here we are, 40 days after their last Justice Court appearance, and to the best of my knowledge, no application has been submitted to the zoning board. No application has been submitted to the Conservation Board for wetlands permits. So again, it's one of those things where if the system allows an applicant who doesn't actually want to comply, there's a lot of wiggle room to not ever come into compliance.
We're working on our applications and our
Absolutely,
permits.
and I appreciate that. And again, I appreciate that the board has held this public hearing to further that along, because the applicant has shown up, their representatives are here, and they've heard the board say what they would like to see to get the conversation started at a work session. So I want to thank the board again for holding the public hearing, for listening to our comments. What we want to see is compliance and restoration of the marsh, and also to deal with the platform and also the riprap wall that was installed, which is a shore hardening.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you. All right, so I would motion to adjourn this till June.
I'll second it.
Seconded by trustee Mary. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right,
Thank you.
Can I just make this clear? We are adjourning the public hearing
till June 2nd.
until after your work session with
Yeah,
the
we don't want to put them.
applicant?
Yeah, because,
So the public hearing is going to be adjourned to the 19th of June?
Yes, it would be the meeting after, the meeting after
And then
the work session.
James and Charlotte will put the application on June 2nd
Yes.
to be reviewed.
The 19th is a control date.
exactly, whatever we do, whether we adjourn it again or what have you. What are you guys
Be
doing?
sure.
What's this guy doing?
The public hearing.
No, but we didn't call this one yet.
Okay,
Okay,
here we go.
hold on a second. Hold on a minute. We got to be official here. Right? Jumping ahead of things.
Yes.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to open up this next public hearing, which is seconded by trustee McLaughlin. This is recalling and amending resolution 2025-104.
Yes.
Joe Scrow, 145 Lynn Avenue. So are we all in favor?
Yes. Aye.
Okay, so now you can sit up here. Just have to state your names for the records and sign in.
My name is Robert Dooley. I'm an attorney with the law firm McGiff Halverson Dooley. I'm the attorney for the property owner.
Okay.
Ed, can you give us backstory on this?
Yeah, okay. I'm digging through my papers. That is digging.
All right.
Well, let me introduce Clay Cofield,
Yes.
here representing Ms. Sproul,
Mhm.
145 Lynn, Hampton Bays. I was here a month ago. You presented me with a letter from the Conservation Board. I filed a permit with the Conservation Board and submitted almost all the paperwork, except for one thing which I got today. I did the posting on the property. The Conservation Board has yet to get back to me, even though I sent them 2 letters and one certified and made a phone call. They refused to talk to me, which I find is very, not a way to run a public institution. So I'm here today to ask for you to approve the permit that I have submitted. I have made all the requirements.
Have we received a letter from the Conservation Board as far as the application? I know there was some issues. I'm asking James.
Yeah, we received it on February 26th.
Okay. And there was a list of a few things that had to be resolved, at which now there's an application before us, but.
They wanted the permit filed.
Yes.
They wanted a fine paid. They wanted certain documents that we have submitted.
So you furnished all that to the conservation?
One I have presented today, which I will drop off on my way out.
All right, we have, well, basically, it's an application for, let me see, where do you read this? Ellen Scrow, it's for 145 Lynn Avenue. The proposed activities is to install 97 feet of armor stone revetment behind the toe of the bluff and 2 8-foot returns. It is proposed to restore the existing bluff, pre-existing natural grade, and protect the bluff with 2 rows of boulders. First row of partially buried 3 to 4 ton boulders placed on filter cloth and partially buried with 2 feet of sand coverage and backfill with crushed stone and hold the filter course in place. Second row of 1 to 2 ton boulders to be partially buried in the face of the bluff. Place 150 cubic yards of sand, bulk of which is to be placed landward of the proposed boulders to avoid movement of the during tidal cycles. Beach grasses to be planted 12 inches on center above the boulders. Before the shoreline work starts, the existing brush and retaining wall debris will be removed from the area. The existing staircase will be partially removed and replaced over the proposed boulders. Now, this whole project is going to start at the mean high water, correct? It's not.
Absolutely.
So that would give us jurisdiction. So I know we had permitted a rock revetment on next door north of it on the right of way, very almost identical to what you're asking for. And then they had come in to reconfigure some of the rocks because they had washed over during a couple of storms. So you're looking to mirror what they did on the other project.
Absolutely.
One of the concerns and why the public hearing is being held is I know there's a lot of people that walk down that right of way. I believe it's White's Lane, and a lot of people that utilize that beach during low tide walks and then back and forth. So I want to make sure that the structure is not going to impede any of the public egress and property.
The ramp for the pier there's a space between the two of about 8, 9, 12 feet.
Yep.
So there's plenty of room to walk around.
Yep.
There would be
Is
no.
there a sand renourishment agreement on this one, or we don't own it?
Well, we haven't gotten that far yet.
Man,
That's
we're
what,
still getting
what we should probably have a discussion because the property owner to the north of White's Lane, what are they? Begins with a B. We have a sand renourishment.
I don't know.
They're French people.
Burgess?
Yeah, that's,
Burgess.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a little more, it's a little longer than that, but it's.
Well, according to the application, the approvals that we have from
Oh,
Southampton.
no, there's another one that's just north of the right of way. There's a right of way that comes down a roadway.
Oh, and there's one further down.
And there's one north of that
North of
that we just approved. We approved it, the structure, and then they asked to put some more rocks on it because they had fallen down. And then we had a sand nourishment agreement put in place on that residence, so in perpetuity that when the sand washes out from behind there, it'll be renourished. And so that way the beach is still maintained in front of these structures.
Understood, and I think that the property owner has expressed and wants to continue to express to do whatever it is that the trustees would like. I know that Mr. Caulfield had reached out to the Conservation Board to ask for additional information for the practicable alternatives for regrading the scoured bluff embankment that was referenced in the March 4th, 2025 correspondence.
Yeah.
We haven't received anything back. We'd be happy to meet with them and talk about that so that we can achieve whatever is necessary. It's
Yeah.
our goal to maximize everything we can do to accommodate the trustees.
Let's just up the two, issues. I mean, we're gonna stay in our wheelhouse, basically what's at the high tide mark. And
Just
with-
to
Clarify that, the plan shows the apparent mean high water, the work to be done above the apparent mean high water. This line here is the apparent mean high water according to this plan, and the work is done up here.
It has to start at mean high water and go.
So I
That
just,
changes daily. So the day that we do it will be the day that the line.
You're talking about this much.
Yeah.
Like
You
2 to
know,
3 feet, depending on the tidal
you're talking-
fluctuations in the bay, whether it's, yeah,
We're gonna pretty much go next door, bring it across.
well, yeah.
We do have DEC approval too, because there's a historical barrier there that the DEC's approved replacement, and I think that's our goal is to
You have
not
a-
modify. The
Yeah, you have a
existing-
bulkhead, 2 bulkheads to the south, and then you're gonna have your property, and then there's another one that has a rock wall, and then there's the right of way, and then there's a third one down north of that, and then there's some bulkheads. So basically stay within that, that pier line. Not to move forward or backwards, to stay in that pier line. And that would
It
be,
makes no point to move it further because then we would impede public access across the.
right.
Across the front of it.
There's a good picture of what's currently there. And that would be where,
That's where it is.
that would be where it would be sited, right? Like halfway out to the bulkhead on the south boundary line.
Right, so we're extending these boulders beyond where the current boulders or stones or
Yep.
retaining wall currently is out. I mean, I guess you could see that high tide line right there on the
Yeah.
image.
Yep.
We have to be able to maintain a.
How close is it to the
Grade.
existing, how close are those boulders to the existing retaining wall? The new like how much farther out are those new boulders being proposed?
The
Would
wooden,
be in
Existing
line,
retaining wall.
in line.
So you're gonna be in line with the existing retaining wall?
The retaining wall is coming out.
No, I understand that,
Or
yeah.
We're gonna try to mimic the coastal
Base of
line
those boulders
that's
with
there,
the existing
yes.
retaining wall?
It's not gonna be straight, it's gonna have a little turn to it.
Yeah. Because according to this, there's 31 feet between the existing retaining wall and the entrance to the dock.
That retaining wall has retained the soil at that point, so that's where we're gonna put the boulders.
And if you screw up by a foot, it's not the end of the
Actually,
world. There's
the-
still 30 foot of
According to the plan,
access and
it's-
egress for the general public to utilize in between the dock. Yeah.
Looks like it's landward of the existing retaining wall, according to the plan.
Right,
The existing retaining wall here, and it's landward of the existing retaining wall, is that
Is
correct?
the
Not in
US
line
Geo-
with the retaining wall.
Geodetic marker.
that's down in New Jersey. That's the tidal fluctuations. It's a survey
All
marker.
of New York State.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's
It's
an
a point.
excellent place to mark from, because it doesn't move. Everything
Yeah.
else moves.
Are those weird looking things?
Yeah.
It's about that round and flush. It's now 2 inches or 3 inches
It's a
off.
fictional
Wow.
place.
It's been elevated.
So I think what our proposal is, if the trustees would like this, these stones to be installed further seaward, I think that there could be a discussion with the property owner to do so, but where it is now is actually preserving the way it is currently, as opposed to expanding the yard area, really.
Being that this is a public hearing, maybe we should, I've been down there multiple times, so I would like the rest of the board to go down there to the address and just take a look at it. So you
I
can,
wouldn't want anything to go seaward, personally. I mean,
Well, the project has to start at the seaward edge.
yeah, that's what I'm
That's
asking
where
for.
it
and
has to
that's-
start at that nexus, right there.
yeah,
And that would be the retaining wall.
that would
that's
be
going-
where the current retaining wall is.
Yes.
So if that's in our jurisdiction, then I'd say
It is,
stick with it.
yes.
And have a
All right.
sand maintenance agreement go along with it.
Yes.
Right.
Do you have any kind of planting behind
Yeah.
the rock?
There will be beach plants, but I think.
Yeah,
you know,
it's all on here.
Things kind of locked into.
Beach grass,
They
12
all have
inches
to
on
be salt
center.
tolerant.
Yes.
Is it on the plans themselves? Do you
It
have,
is.
yeah,
It is, it's on page 2, or on the proposed activity, it says beach grass will be planted 12 inch on center from the boulders.
Those little hatched lines in the yellow.
And I believe it's number 3 on proposed activities.
Correct. Is it, what's, so I'm
Yeah,
a little
see,
confused. It's hard to.
yeah, it's hard to delineate.
This yellow, is that the beach grass? And then the pink is the
Go to the side.
boulders?
I just put a few in there because it gets very crowded.
I guess if you could put,
That's 18 inches on center and in some places even closer than that.
So is it a question of presentation?
Yeah, I
Make sure it's
guess-
clear for the trustees to identify.
Yeah,
We
I
want to
think-
clear for the inspection,
Yeah.
so that you guys are cleared as soon as possible. So there's no confusion. They read the sheet, they look at the plans, bing, bang, boom, it's 10 foot back. So
Even if
the
it's
more
adding
clarity
a
the better.
legend
Yeah.
to the plan that shows what the yellow and what the pink is, I'm assuming the pink is the boulders.
I mean, that's my reading of it also, is
The weight
that
of the boulders is specified. It's exactly what the neighbor is.
No, the
I think
color.
a legend would be a simple thing to add to make sure that
Yeah.
this is seamless.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty good as it is.
Right?
Well, if you gotta get more clarity for the guys that are doing the inspection, that's always helpful.
Talk about the inspection. I would not advise walking down the stairs, because you may not get back up. So you have to walk down to the end of the right-of-way.
Yeah, go down the end of the right.
Inspection is once it's finalized.
Yeah, that's what we're talking
That's what
about.
we're talking about. When it's
when it's final.
finalized, and we have
It
a
will be
building
perfect.
inspector from Southampton Town
It'll
who
be
does, well, as long as he can look at.
You wanted the
this,
board to
yeah.
go.
So, because we're at a public hearing, so let me ask, is there somebody else here that wants to speak? At this, anybody on Zoom that wants to speak relative to this public hearing that we have?
No one on Zoom.
No one wants to speak on Zoom. Nobody wants to get involved in this conversation here. You guys are hiding like I'm some kind of a comedy act. I'm gonna start
No.
calling people out. Okay, we're all good then. Thank you.
And then I would recommend that you get together with Joe Lombardo and get the language of the sand maintenance agreement all sorted out.
Yep.
That will make this go a lot smoother.
Understood.
All right, so relative to the public hearing portion of this, closing this, or are we adjourning this? What do you want to do? What do you want to do, Mr. Lombardo, with this one?
Which one are we talking?
Close it and leave it open comment for, written comment for.
I don't have a town email address, so that's it.
This current one that we just did?
This one, this one here.
Yeah.
That's what we're talking
Yeah.
about.
Just leave it open.
Leave it open for comment.
You want to leave it open, or you want to close it and leave it open for written comments? What's your?
Close it.
For this one? You can close it.
Yeah, then close it, and leave it open for written comment for 2 weeks. So you want to make that
I'll
motion?
make a motion to close it and leave it open for 2 weeks for written comment.
I'll second it.
Seconded by trustee Marin, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Here
you.
now. Okay, so now we're on what they call public portion. So if there's anybody here that wants to speak for 3 minutes, public portion, you go over there, you sign in, state your name for the record, address the board.
Oh, boy.
There you go.
You got the whole show.
Thank you for waiting patiently today.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you very much for having me and allowing me to speak to you. My name is Lorraine Bracco. I live on Old Sag Harbor Road, and that is why I'm here, to discuss what's going on my street. I have something, I think it's much easier if I just read it to you, and that'll hopefully be my 3 minutes. So over the winter, the road has further deteriorated to a horrific volume, heavy equipment, poor drainage, and lack of maintenance. The road now has numerous large potholes, uneven pools of flooding, and severely worn-out markings in the risk of an accident, especially during poor weather conditions when visibility is low. You cannot drive on the road and avoid potholes without heading into traffic, which is extremely dangerous, and both being reported in near-miss accidents on the road. Only in a matter of time will a more serious incident occur. The deterioration on both sides of the dirt road and around the bases of trees has ruined the integrity and the stability of the trees. Often large branches are on the road, causing hazardous driving situations. The road now accommodates a huge amount of volume because Waze has decided to make this road a cut through. So that road was not intended for any kind of the volume of traffic that is going on. The problem is no one can walk on this road without fearing for their life. There are no children playing around there. My post box office, my post box
Mailbox?
has been obliterated on several occasions. They throw their trash. It's become a dumpoir, really, Old Sag Harbor Road. And it's a beautiful road and it should be maintained. So you can't walk on this street without really praying that you're not going to end up in the hospital. So basically, the proposal is to pave the road from Millstone to Brick Kiln Road and add, I think, which is the most important thing, is speed bumps. They fly by at 50 miles an hour. I have sworn, and I don't.
3 minutes.
And I'm the one who,
Let her
I'm
finish it out.
laughing because I honk and I go really slow and I'm the one who gets the finger, which really annoys me to no end. Anyway,
We understand, and
Would speed bumps be the answer, or just leave the potholes that are there?
well, first of all, I have some pictures. I don't know if you were able to do it, but it's a river.
we're well aware. We are, believe me, we are well aware.
I am begging for speed bumps.
We are well aware, and we are
James,
as
can you pull that up?
frustrated as you are. It is a
Sag
problem
Harbor Road.
because unfortunately, these roads that they call trustee roads, and that's a separate debate, which we can get into at some other point in time.
Okay.
We have a super limited budget because we're not getting the full effect of having, say, the town's highway department, working on this. This is just our maintenance staff that are out there trying to put Band-Aids on things. And in addition, do some plowing and some salting and sanding and doing what they can on literally a shoestring budget for all of the roads that they deem trustee roads, because it's not directly leading to water like a ramp or something like that. So we understand this is an issue. We're trying to find solutions for this. We're as frustrated as you are, but we don't have the deep pocket to run into to do this, but we're trying to work on some solutions to do this.
The speed bumps would be an incredible help because it's a very windy road and therefore you don't see, and they don't care most of the time in their huge trucks.
Right. Well, that's the thing is that, there's been a lot of construction on a lot of these roads that they call trustee roads, and they're tearing up at their roads, and there's no such thing as like a secret shortcut because the volume of people are out here. And yes, they've got these apps now.
Yes.
And they send even more traffic, which degrades the road a lot sooner, and it creates these traffic issues. We're as frustrated as you are. If
The speed bumps would stop them from speeding 50 miles an hour in their trucks when they can't see a car coming the other direction. It really is a disaster. We're going to have a really bad problem one day, and I pray it is not.
Look at County Road 39, right? All of us have to deal with, we had a lot of people that were late for our meeting that started at 9:30 today because of the traffic and conditions, right? Coming east, and there's accidents on that road almost daily, right? So we get it. We hear you. We're as frustrated as you are, and we are working on trying to find solutions. We have a very small maintenance crew. Their responsibilities at this point in time is to get the navigation aids into the waterways, into the bays, so that that's all set. After that, with all the rain that we've been having, and we've got more coming, they're going to start to address this. We have even had people approach us, like retired deputy highway superintendents that have come to myself, president, and the secretary treasurer, Mr. Warner, to say, I see you guys are working your hearts out trying to deal with the roadway issues. He's retired, but he still wants to come and try and help us.
Yes,
and we're gonna ask him,
because that's what good people try to do.
We get that, and we're gonna grab some of his talent and try to figure it out. And I appreciate you coming down here to put a spotlight on it, because we are as frustrated. It's just not as easy of a solution as it appears, but we get it, we understand, we're trying to work through it. It's difficult.
You do have to keep putting onto the table the very fact that we truly do not own those roads.
Right,
And
we-
until
we
we can
also-
get that legally settled,
See, that's another thing. I didn't want to go there just to give you, but you
you have to.
I waited a long time, I'm
gonna-
ready to hear.
I'm going to address this with you because of the fact that you did patiently wait for a long time.
Thank you.
The trustee, we're the oldest elected board in the country, and we're primarily underwater lands, okay, and you know, this sort of thing, and easement access points and roadways that lead directly to getting people to the water. There were other trustee boards called proprietors, and we believe there's a possibility it may have been that trustee board. If that's the case, then that road technically belongs to the town, and then they could perhaps help put more into this. But that's a lot of legal research, right? That's been, and I don't want to go too deep because that's a lot of legal research.
Don't shake your head,
No, I'm
I
shaking
hate
my
that.
head, man, because you have this thing for speed bumps, and the reason we will not put a speed bump is because of potential liability that could come on a piece of property that we don't own.
Right. So speed bumps.
So we don't know who owns this
We
road?
are working
Is that
on
what
this.
we're talking?
Being worked on.
We're
but
working on
At the end of the day, my legal research shows that this trustee board does not own the roads.
Right,
The
but-
proprietors did.
Correct.
And that's the town.
But in the interest of public safety, and because nice people like yourself live on that road, we are doing what we can with plowing, with sanding, with Band-Aids to try and stem the tide of what's going on. But in terms of a bigger repair, we want to do the research so that we can go to the folks that really have the funds to say, look, there's $1 zillion in tax revenue generated on this road, and you need to do this. So we are diligently working on this professionally. It's just that these things, when you're dealing with a historical book, it just takes time for us to get to where we got to get to.
Okay, so I did submit some photos, which I would love for you to see.
Thank you.
I think that's fair. And also, I mean, I would like to go to my road of my people and say, listen, could we chip in? Could we
Right.
pay for some of these things?
I would be more than happy to meet with you at a scheduled time, okay? Perhaps on site or at our main office at 240 West in Hampton Bays.
Okay.
That way you don't have to sit here for hours and hours, and we could schedule a
I
time.
learned a lot, by the way. Thank you.
You're welcome. And we could go over this, and maybe that would be helpful. So if you want to speak to your neighbors, contact myself as the president of the board. I'd be more than happy to make the time and go over this.
Okay, and that's, your number is public record?
I couldn't sneak up on a bed of oysters.
Okay.
Okay. Everybody knows that I'm.
And I think we should reach out to the highway superintendent and get what it costs to do like a mile of road so that we have
Well,
some
we-
cost basis.
We discussed that, and that's what part of my discussion
it's
was.
a
with-
lot.
It is a lot, but use as an example this project we're doing now at Circle Beach.
Yep.
Right, so, you know what, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's have a meeting.
Yes.
And let's do that,
Paving.
okay? Yeah, we're gonna fix up Circle Beach. Listen, we're putting speed bumps over there. Don't worry about it.
Speed potholes.
Yeah, I mean, look, I appreciate your time, I really do, thank you. I can see that this is not going to be fixed in the very near future, which makes me really sad. But I do have the pictures, and I really think if you see what I'm talking about, you would understand how detrimental
You
this
may get a Band-Aid in the near future.
Yours is
You may
not
get a
the
bit.
only trustee road that we have these issues on. I can assure you that I have roads in Hampton Bays, Old Canoe Place Road, that are still they're not much better than they were back in the 1800s when they were wagon trails. And I tried to pave them and fix them. We had some money, and the people didn't want it. They
Right.
wanted their roads left the way they were.
Correct.
They didn't want the trade parade to
We
run.
want it, we
Right.
want it, because,
Let's move this to a
Yes.
a productive forum,
Yeah.
right? Talk to your neighbors, and you could reach out to me, and then we'll sit down.
thank you very much, I do appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Watch my movie on Netflix, Nornas. Bye.
She was just here for the plug.
Oh, yeah, it's great, you'll love it. What's your movie? Nornas, it's called, with Vince Vaughn. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
My wife was just talking
All
about
right,
that.
so let's move on. Anybody else here want to address the public?
I just am waiting for the resolution to pass.
Really?
Patiently, so patiently.
I wasn't here the last time it was on and it didn't pass.
Oh, so they didn't tell you we withdrew it from the agenda.
What's that?
They didn't tell you we withdrew it?
Very funny.
All right, so there
All
is,
right.
anybody else want to address the board? I see something is going on here. May I,
Yeah, we have
What?
people on Zoom.
people are on Zoom, they'd like to address the board?
Yeah, we have one person.
Okay. Let him in.
You unmute. You have to unmute.
Unmute it.
Can't hear you.
How about this?
Now
How's
we got
this?
you. We hear
All
you
right.
now.
My name is Philip White. I also live on Old Sag Harbor Road. And first of all, I want to publicly thank Ms. Bracco for standing there and waiting for 2 hours to be able to present our case to her. I've heard what you gentlemen have said, and I appreciate it, and I respect what you said. The only thing I'd like to add to what Ms. Bracco mentioned earlier is that if it could just be possible to get the potholes fixed, fill the potholes as a temporary Band-Aid to at least stop
Yeah, that's
cars
gonna happen.
from having. Pardon?
That's going to happen, sir. That's what I was explaining to her, is that the crew's been out dealing with navigation aids. And that's got to be priority at this time of the year, heading for Memorial Day weekend, is all the buoys have to get into the town waterways. Once those buoys are in, then they're going to shift their focus back to the roadways and other issues. So you, like I said to her, you will get that Band-Aid, which is dealing with the potholes, as soon as we possibly can get those gentlemen off of the waterway and back out on the roadway, and then we'll just work together on a solution moving forward. So that is, we intend to help you with that as quickly as we possibly can.
Can you provide us with a drop dead date, if you will, that
You
you'll
know
be
what?
able
Let
to
me
start
explain
that?
to you the reality in our situation. Our barge blew an engine and we're running way behind. Okay, so I cannot tell you a drop dead date, but I can tell you it's on a priority, because it's not just this road, it's other roads that we have. And we've been getting a lot of rain and heavy rain, and it creates this issue. I can assure you it's on the maintenance crew's list to deal with, and it's going to happen, but I cannot give you a drop dead date just because of the fact that we end up with mechanical failures and bad weather that puts us behind. But rest assured, we're as frustrated as you are, and we'll do the best we can.
All right. Thank you so much, and thank you for taking the time to listen to me.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, we got another public portion.
Sorry, yes.
Giving you 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. I'm Bridget Fleming with McBride Consulting and Business Development on 149 of this year, which is to recall and amend Resolution 130 of this year. And I want to just say thank you to the trustees for your understanding on this issue. We've had some challenges with the DEC with regard to a necessary mitigation of storm damage. And I want to thank President Horowitz for agreeing to recall and amend, put this forward with some additional legislative intent language that just confirms what was discussed initially when Surfside was here regarding the local knowledge confirming that this is in fact a project that is justified. So thank you for that. If you had any questions, that's why I was here, because I wasn't here the first time that it passed without the language that we had requested.
Do you have any questions for?
Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Bridget.
You want to take it out of order,
All
Scott?
right, we can take it out of order.
You want to do that?
Make a motion.
You want to make a motion, seconded by McLaughlin, all in favor, aye. So where is this thing? This is
149 on page 4.
14.
Page 4.
page 4? Okay, so 2025-149, recall and amend. 2025 TRUS 130 of Robert Reichenbach Jr., 15 Ramona Drive, Hampton Bays, whereas the Board of Trustees finds the subject type 2 action pursuant to 6 Part 617, no further environmental review. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Freeholders of the Common Island Town of Southampton hereby authorize President and Secretary to sign the permit of Robert Reichenbach for the installation of approximately 100 linear feet, approximate 7'5" wide angle partial subgrade natural stone sand to remediate and restore eroded sand beach and portions of the existing developed property, which I think is what we're trying to resolve here. So I'd like to make a motion to.
Second.
Seconded, Trustee Warner. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. So you can go home now, right? All right.
I do really appreciate the work you all do. It's amazing.
Thank you, thank you.
Bye, Bridge, take care.
All right, so we have 2025-147, application of Red Creek Equities LLC, 14 Duckwood Lane, tax map 900-172.1-1-8. I recommend its approval.
Second.
Second, Trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
We got 2025-148, application of Vanessa Ryan, 20 Shinnecock Road, East Quogue, tax map 900-384-3-32. Recommend its approval.
Second.
Second, Trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye. Trustee Resolution 2025-150, application for Pantago Trust 111 Canal Way, Hampton Bays, Suffolk County, tax map number 900-322-2-2, body of water, Smiths Creek Canal. Recommend its approval. I need a second.
Second. Second, Trustee McLaughlin, all in favor?
Aye.
Trustee Resolution 2025-151, applications for Seinberg, 8B North Highway, Hampton Bays, Suffolk County, tax map 900-190-1-12.2, body of water, Peconic Bay. We worked on this at work session. I recommend its approval. I need a second.
Second. Second, Trustee Parsons, all in favor?
Aye.
Trustee Resolution 2025-152, application for Joseph Termina, 4 Mill Pond Road, Hampton Bays, Suffolk County, tax at 900-321-1-13, body of water, Smiths Creek Canal. We worked on this at work session. I recommend its approval. Need a second?
Second. Second, Trustee Parsons, all in favor?
Aye.
Trustee Resolution 2025-153, application for the second for Canal Properties LLC Boat Base in Hampton Bays, Suffolk County, tax map 900-207-4-25, body of water, Shinnecock Canal. We worked on this at work session. I recommend its approval.
Second.
Second, Trustee McLaughlin, all in favor?
Trustee Resolution 2025-154, first application for the town of Southampton, Bay Avenue, Hampton Bays, Suffolk County, tax map 900-395-1-2, body of water, Shinnecock Bay. We worked on this at work session, so I recommend its approval. I need a second.
Second. Second, Trustee Parsons, all in favor?
Trustee Resolution 2025-155, second renewal application for Strong's Old Fort Marina LLC, 74 Little Neck Road, Shinnecock Hills, Suffolk County, tax map number 900-234-4-13, body of water, Old Fort Pond. We worked on this at work session. I recommend its approval. I need a second.
Second, Trustee Parsons, all in favor?
Aye.
Trustee Resolution 2025-156, second renewal for Strong's Old Fort Pond Marina LLC, 74 Little Neck Road, Shinnecock Hills, Suffolk County, tax map 900-234-4-14, body of water, Old Fort Pond. Second its approval.
Second, Trustee McLaughlin, all in favor?
Aye. Trustee Resolution 2025-157, this is an application of 15 Long Point LLC at 15 Long Point Road in the Village of Sag Harbor. As we spoke of this at the catwalk and appear in the work session. Can I have a second on this?
Second. Second, Trustee Parsons, all in favor?
Resolution 158, this is application 269 Tower Point Road, the fan tax at 900-9-1-7-117 by water, Davis Creek. Can I have a second?
Second. Second, Trustee Parsons, all in favor?
Aye. Resolution 159 of 25, this is a recall and amend application for 92 Cold Spring Pond Road, fantastic 900. 155-1-35 by water, Cold Spring Pond. Can I have a second?
Second on that.
Second, Trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
So I have trustee resolution 2025-160, call and amend 2024 TRUS 320, setting the trustees meeting and work session. This is the required resolution to shift our work sessions officially to 10:30 a.m.
I'll second that.
Seconded, trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
There's an attached new meeting schedule for everybody. So then we have 2025-161, notice of public hearing, rules and regulations for the management products of the town waters, considering amending the management and products for Article 5, Section 38, waterfowl hunting. We would like to set that hearing for Monday, June 16th, 2025 at 1 p.m. And waterfowl hunting location, permit holder must install grass and have their duck blind ready to be used for hunting by no later than December 31st of each year. Prior to December 31st of each year, all permit holders must schedule a visual inspection of their duck blind and/or floating duck blind that is used in multiple locations. Scheduling an inspection with the Town of Southampton Marine Patrol through the Town of Southampton online services portal that is accessed via the town website located at southamptontowny.gov. So this public hearing is for establishing a clear protocol for requesting your inspection with a record and accountability feature built in, which should be helpful with proper communications and documentation. So I
recommend its approval.
Okay, seconded by trustee Warner. All in favor? Aye. So public hearing will be scheduled.
All right, trustee resolution 2025-162. Warrant number 8 for $35,568.83. Air Gas USA LLC, $337.58. Barnes House of Tires, Barnes House of Tires LLC, $548.96. Constructs LLC, $419. Charlotte Dickerson for $63. Interscience for $1,251. Joseph R. Lombardo, $29.50. William M. Decker, DBA Personal, $26,858. Hawk Sinclair Fuel Incorporated, $187.45. Riverhead Building Supply, $77.48. Toshiba Business Solutions, $691.88. Town of Southampton Gas, $19.32.97, and WB Mason for $251.51 for a total of $35,568.83. I recommend its approval. So
Second, trustee McLaughlin, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, so that concludes, since we have no walk-ons, boy, I tell you what, it's been a long day. Long day. Is there any further discussion?
Real quick, exactly.
What's that? Yes, I know that. I'm talking about in.
Okay.
Burn forum, no.
Not for me.
I'll make a second.
You're good?
to adjourn this.
You're good?
No executive session.
Well, no, we have a brief one.
We have a brief one.
We have a brief one. An update. Okay, so at this point in time, I wish everybody have a great afternoon. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn and go into executive session for discussing.
Second.
Seconded, trustee Warner, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, have a great one.